Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast, everyone. This is episode 317. Nate and I are in the garage here. It is hot and steamy in Columbus, Ohio. Sweating.
At first, because that pause, you made it sound like it was just hot and steamy in the garage. I was like, no, all of Columbus is that way.
Not that kind of podcast here. So we don't want to keep him backstage here. Bring him on while we do the evening announcements here. But welcome back to the show, co-founder and Crowned Heads rep, Jake Sanders, everyone.
Going on, everybody. Thanks for having me
sir?
on. Good. How are you guys?
Good. Also, like I said, it's a little hot here in Columbus, Ohio. You're not too far.
Yep, it's hot in Zanesville too.
Yeah.
So, a little sticky.
Summertime, man. Summertime.
Sticky icky.
I want to thank our sponsors here. So let's start with you guys out there. Patreon.com/Bourbon and BS podcast. We've got 3 different tiers. We appreciate the continued support. Helps us stream this to you guys every week and also post on the audio stuff. I need to catch up on a couple episodes on that. And so you guys can listen to those, share the audio as well. But patreon.com/Bourbon and BS podcast gets this thing to continue to go. And also one-time contributions at Venmo at Bourbon and BS really makes it easy if you guys want to contribute a bottle or whatever, but can't get it to us. That's the way to go right there. So also want to thank you guys that are sporting the gear. Nate's got one on tonight. It's kind of the murdered out one, if you will. It's a dark gray with black lettering. Pour one more, light up another. We'll figure this out together shirt.
Always like that one.
Yeah, it's available buyjack.com/Bourbon and BS. I'm wearing a typically confusing shirt from Crowned Heads.
It's so confusing.
Palace
more
Laundry.
questions than ever.
I have been asked while wearing this shirt if I work at a laundromat, if I own laundry places, or just simply what does your shirt mean. So I mean, at least it gets things going in the conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
So we have that, which is good.
It's your icebreaker.
Yeah, I didn't know I needed one, but I have one. So that's not
your
available.
voice. Your voice wasn't like even more enough, but
right.
So now it's a shirt.
Not this shirt. My shirt, the Palace Laundry, is not available on buyjack.com/Bourbon and BS, but there is a lot of cool gear on there, including the podcast shirt like Nate's got on. We've got some BS Cigar Company gear on there as well. We've got some ladies deep neck V's on there for the ladies or anyone that wants to wear them. But they're on there as well. So check that out.
So
it is. Yeah. Okay. You're right.
Sorry. I mean, I gotta.
No, you're absolutely right. I guess that came across wrong when I said all right. But Tinder Box at Easton, as we get into our sponsors, we have that. Tinder Box at Easton, Columbus, Ohio. We are smoking something from Crowned Heads that is now available at Tinder Box at Easton in Columbus, Ohio. This is going to be the Crowned Heads Coroneta. This is the Maduro. They carry a lot of Crowned Heads products and do really well with those. So
yes, thank you.
Mil Diaz Juarez is there. We have the La Imperiosa. We've got the what else am I missing?
Juarez, Mil Diaz Maduro, La Beretta. And only 130 stores across the U.S. that has La Beretta. So
there you go. That. Yeah. So yeah, we've got a great line from Crowned Heads. We also have Yellow Rose and Tennessee Waltz when we can have them. We currently are in stock there at Tinder Box at Easton in Columbus, Ohio. Also want to thank Altadis USA. The backup cigar tonight, I figured it was appropriate to stay a little bit on the fuller side. We have, I think it's kind of a garage favorite here. The H. Upman. This is the Heritage Nicaragua. Nice
the dark
smoke there. Yeah, the darker one there.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have that.
That's good.
That was my favorite new cigar when it came out a few years back.
Yeah. Very solid smoke made by AJ Fernandez and Altadis USA. I want to thank BS Cigar Company as well for the support with the gold made by Plasencia and the silver made by Espinosa. Some fantastic cigars there available a couple places around Columbus, Ohio, but based out of also our sponsor Tinder Box at Easton. So check those out. You can always contact us through the podcast, or you can always get a hold of BS Cigar Company through social media or also through the Tinder Box at Easton. Like I said, they carry them as well. So definitely check those out. Without further ado, I might have to turn the brightness up on the screen, but I don't want to get up and do it. It's kind of.
Am I too dark?
No, I think like I had it on the brightest, and then it kind of, I think it corrected with the sunlight. So try to go to the settings here without losing the feed here. But see, I can't see anything. The screen's too far away. So
display
up, down, right there.
Down one.
It's not display, is it?
I mean, if you guys are worried about it, I mean, everything looks good, like on the feed.
Hey, there
I'm
it
looking
is.
at my phone.
It's all bright.
There we go.
Oh, okay.
Hey, we got it.
You're welcome.
People looking at us like we're like the old men. Like, is that it?
I can read it.
All right. Jesus. All right, Jake, what's going on, man?
A lot, but it's all good.
All
It's
good.
all good. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's all good now. So the last couple of months have been kind of a whirlwind, but it's good. So got in a car accident. Wasn't bad. So like everybody that says, if you're okay, thank you very much. But yeah,
Everyone's okay, right?
Also, wasn't your fault.
wasn't my fault. Was actually the Durango in the video right here. Doesn't look too bad in the sunshine, but it needs the facelift. So, but apparently, when you have 170,000 miles on a 2014 Durango, they just want to total it out. So that's perfect.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Well, not.
Are you going to drive
it-
with a salvage title, or are you just going to repair it?
No, I'm just gonna tell. I mean, that's what the truck was today.
Okay,
So-
so I got you.
Yeah, so they're giving me money for that, and then I'm going to put that towards the new truck. So
Gotcha.
yeah, but it's sad to see that one go because the motor and the transmission's strong. But it's I don't know. It's been in the family since it was new, but it
Yeah, you put a lot of miles on it, obviously, with your career at this point.
yeah, and I love that vehicle. And it's got a little horsepower, giddy up and go, all wheel drive. So I like it. But it's time for new beginnings. Seems like every time I talk to you, Steve, there's something new. So
That's all right. I think you're at that stage in life, and I mean, you bought the house. What now? Is that a year and a half?
just over a year. Yeah.
Just
in
over a
March
year.
Yeah.
So you got the new house. A couple years into the career, right? With this this part of your career, the sales and, if you will, the regional manager part of your career.
Yeah, it'll be 2 years in July.
Okay.
So July 5th was my last day at Burn by Rocky Patel, and then July 6th I was in Vegas with Crowned Heads. So it was like that. But
Bit of a whirlwind there, huh?
yeah, wouldn't replace it at all. It's been a blessing. So
That's good. That's good. Nate, do you have any questions for our guest? Currently.
So what's the new vehicle you got?
There you go.
So I got I've been looking at trucks for a minute now, but I got a Ram 1500 Laramie Longhorn.
Oh, you like Dodge?
So yeah, you think. Well, it used to be a Chevy family. And then
before I knew you.
Yeah, and then Dad or Scat Pack, and then that kind of set everything
That was
off.
it. That was it.
Yeah. So that kind of set everything off. Funny enough is that so he has a Laramie 1500 Ram as well, 2019. But mine is a higher trim package than his.
And no one likes the bragger, man. Come on.
Yeah, no, but it's funny. It's just funny because it's older, right? But somebody took good care of it. So
Yeah.
it only has
No, it's
22,000 miles on it, and it's got everything I'd need, and it got a really good deal on it. So somebody was looking out for me.
That's good, man. I mean, that's the market's starting to come back down a little bit. We'll see. Give it a few more months, and hopefully it'll straighten back out. Not the interest rates, but it sounds like you got a decent interest rate, and I think it's because the financial institutions seem to be just taking control of it. They're like, we're not making any, giving any loans out at what the Fed plus whatever is. So
Right.
we're just going to basically take a little bit of a hit here and get shit moving again. So that's at least a positive.
Well, I think a lot of people have started putting money into like CDs and like high yield savings accounts and stuff like that, which is going to raise or going to lower those interest rates, because everybody wanted the high interest rates, right? So, now it's going to teeter back and try to balance out again.
Sure.
I mean, that's just like the natural market of things. I mean, I'm not a finance major by any means, but I know that much.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it's
All right,
exciting. How are you guys?
Good, man. Real good.
How was we had Guy Fieri?
Yeah, I was gonna say put it on the Bourbon and BS community page, but yeah, Guy Fieri was in the shop on Tinder Box Easton on Wednesday of last week, so a week ago. That's why we didn't have a show. So we appreciate everyone having a little bit of patience with us. That was a kind of a throw together event within 5
As I
days.
say,
It was awesome though.
It was less than a
Yeah,
week.
and you appreciate you coming out and supporting it.
Yeah, for sure. I gotta
But it
support
was
my
great.
guys at Espinosa. So
He was great. Knuckle sandwiches were flying.
Yeah.
And,
I got a
yeah.
box too. So
you know, I was smoking. The Habano was not my favorite, and I smoked a 60 that night, Gordo there,
yeah.
and it kind of calmed it down a little bit. And I think it got I caught a little bug for the flavor, and so the next day I've smoked I think 3 now. We got in this Corona Gorda size of it.
Yeah, that thing's a pepper bomb.
It's a firecracker. I don't think it'll sell. So I mean, like, I don't think we're gonna reorder it a whole lot because you got the Robusto, the Toro, and the 60, and it's like the Corona Gorda is like right around that same price to my knowledge, and so it's like, wow, you know, it's just not as popular of a size. But I tell you, that's a great cigar. If I've got like 45 minutes like left in an evening, and I'm like, you know, I don't want to burn a Toro or, you know, stay out here too long, but
exactly,
that is a great size for those that are looking for it. I feel like those Corona sizes, I mean, you guys do some interesting sizes on your cigars too with crowned heads, but it's just that it's a tough one to use with a blend, in my opinion. When you get down to like the 46 or below ring gauge, it's just the blends have to work.
Yeah, they do.
I don't think they always do.
Well, I think it's because of the concentrated flavor profile. I mean, like that's, you know, Steve and all three of us has talked about that for a while now. Is just when you get down to those lower ring gauges, it either goes like really sharp and spicy sometimes, or then if it's like that nutty, like creamy flavor, then that's amplified too. You know? So it's just whatever you think is the flavor profile. I feel like, maybe you guys can tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that flavor profile is just concentrated more.
Yeah, I think that's a size kind of like Lancero, where those are the guys going after Lanceros or Corona Gordas. Those are people who really like the flavor of a blend and want to get the most they can out of that. I think, you know, a lot of people though look at, say, a Robusto or Toro and go, it's going to be more smoke time, and so time for the money, they tend to go with those other sizes.
It is
that are
tough.
More traditional.
It is tough, especially when you're dropping, you know, 10 to 15 bucks in that range, and it's like, all right, so I'm getting a lot more right now. Summertime is always a big thing where I feel a lot of cigar smokers are they'll look at the difference, like, oh, it's $1 more for a Toro versus a Robusto. People have the time a lot of times this part of the year, you know, they're like, oh, I'll just go with the bigger one. It's $1 more. And I mean, that's got to smoke for what, another 15, 20 minutes. It's like, typically.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think manufacturers struggle a lot with coming up with sizes in that regards, you know, because is somebody going to spend that extra $1 for that Toro? More than like 9 times out of 10, I would probably say yes. You know, and that's where we are in the industry with a plethora of big ring gauges. You know, it's more money for the buck most of the time. So which I understand completely, because when I first met you, Steve, that's the way I was.
Yeah, you were the bigger ring gauge.
Yeah,
you know,
and
I liked what we had done, and we don't sell it any longer. That with the BS Silver made by Espinosa, where you put that little foot ribbon on there to distinguish it. It was a 46 ring gauge.
The Robito.
Loved it. Yeah, I love that size. It just didn't sell as well, but at least giving a little distinction. Or I know sometimes there'll be like limited edition ones, or you know, they'll have a nickname for the smaller cigar. You know,
right.
And you just have to watch that price point. You know, Tatuai has got that Petit Cazadores that sells really well for us, but it is substantially less than the rest of the line. So you know what I mean? But it's a tough game. Coroneta Maduro. New cigar from Crowned Heads.
Brand new. I mean, just hit your guys' shelves, right?
That's right. So we got in the Baron, the Dukes.
You got all 3 sizes.
What's the big one? Or is that the Baron?
The Baron's the big one. And we can get into all the, you know, goofy names and everything. But
Earl.
It's Earl, Duke, and Baron. The Earl is a 5.5. I'm sorry, 5 by 52. So classic Robusto, in my opinion, you know, besides being a 50 ring gauge. But you have a Duke, it's kind of a Robusto extra, 5.5 by 54, and then you have a Baron by 6 by 56. So kind of a thinner Gordo, I guess you could say.
What is it? Oh, it's 56, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not mad at that at all.
It's actually a really good size.
Yeah.
But we're just really excited to, have them out because there's Coroneta, Habano, and Maduro. Maduro came from Ernesto Perez Carrillo's factory, which was just renamed to Casa Carrillo in the Dominican Republic. So it's been really, really exciting to see kind of more blends come out of his factory.
Yeah.
Which is, and for them to rebrand and kind of get their family name involved with it. So
yeah, he seems to be pumping out a lot of stuff himself and for others at this point.
Oh yeah. And
somehow he's getting hotter in the industry, which, he's been in it for so long. So
yeah, well, I mean, I think it helps with people like us and with his collaborations with Oliva a little bit too.
Yep.
With his allegiance. So it's and he's, he had 2 number 1s and a number 2 within, 4 years. So it's kind of hard to knock that.
Yeah, he's got a decent track record currently, I'd say. Yep. All right, so this is the Maduro. You've got, is this 2 bands or no? This is 1 band. No, this is, what is this?
There's 2. There's actually.
Oh, I see it now. You got the foot band.
There's actually 3. You have the main band, and then you have kind of a double band where it says Maduro.
Yeah.
And then you have a foot band that says Crowned Heads.
Yeah.
So
hey, Alicia.
And then everybody says hi to Alicia. Bye, babe.
And the bands go off in opposite directions.
Do they? I haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, but if you notice, oh shit, sorry.
It's all right. It's okay. It's not that loud of a car.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, guys. But I think the blend is really cool on this. I think that's what kind of sets it apart.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is the darkest Mexican San Andreas I've seen in a minute.
I would say it's Oscuro.
Yeah. Sure. It's very dark, very oily, rich. And then you have an Ecuadorian Connecticut binder, which is very interesting.
Ecuadorian Connecticut. So are you talking like a Connecticut shade?
Just.
Or is it just undisclosed?
Just a Ecuadorian Connecticut. I don't think it's technically a shade, but okay. I could be wrong. So I know Ernesto has been messing around with Ecuadorian Connecticut a lot.
Yeah.
Especially higher primings on the plant. So it could be a shade. So
okay.
But you have Nicaraguan and then Dominican Republic fillers, along with some Pennsylvania broadleaf in there. So
that's a dicey one to use, man.
For sure, especially with broadleaf. Yeah,
and I hate to say I can taste it in this blend because I don't know, but I kind of feel like it does. It's such a unique flavor on that Pennsylvania broadleaf. Even if there's 1 leaf in it, it just has like a punch to it.
It's got like it's like a bitter espresso, like dark, rich coffee, like black coffee.
Very much so.
Kind of thing. I don't want to say dirty because it's like a negative connotation, but I don't have any other way to say it.
So it's like that coffee that's been in the pot, it's on the burner, just almost too long, but not quite.
With grandpa's sock in it that he wore for like 4 days.
Well, I don't know about that. I can't
like really cowboy coffee.
yeah, right. So I mean, it's just it's a unique flavor, and I'm not churching it up. Does that chair work for you? There's a all good.
Who is it? Rabbit Man?
No, Seth Nagel here.
Oh, okay. Hi, Seth. Welcome.
Nagel, right? Yep. Yes. Said it. I'm like, wait.
Yeah, I watch how you say that, but yeah.
I was going to say Nagel or Nagel. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure he's heard that his whole life.
So yeah, the Pennsylvania broadleaf, it's not a bad leaf. What do you think? I mean, Nate, this one is, here's what I can appreciate about it, and then Nate, you go, is that utilizing some of that, and like you said, the Ecuadorian Connecticut as a binder.
That definitely balances it out. It helps the creaminess kind of come through a little bit.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say, I think that the blend, it's different. So, man, it's tough. You talk about that, something new all the time, and it is very tough to come out with a newish flavor. You know what I mean? In a profile, because
it is
where basically all the tobaccos are coming from more or less the same farms. There's a lot of them, but the same farms. Different types of seed varietals and everything else. It's just I feel as though it's more difficult than people can give credit to these blenders to be creative. So you do need to use something like a Pennsylvania broadleaf to throw it off a little bit.
Yeah, I think for sure. And I think when you add in everybody else, all the other companies, not even just like our own lines and our own brands, I think if John is notorious for stating that if you look at, and I can attest to this, if you look at his desk in the office, it's just all unbanded cigars and bundled cigars, from stuff that he is working on for the future. And it's no knock to him. It's just, you can't really remember every flavor profile that you work on all the time. I would assume, there's no way. And I think, I'll add in, hopefully I don't get in trouble for this, but I'll add in that, this was kind of not a secondary thought, but the Coroneta Habano was done a year ago.
And yet we still don't have it.
Yeah.
So,
well, no, we wanted them both to come out at the same time at PCA. So that was the point.
All right.
So there's a little bit of strategy here.
Not the shops, but to the PCA.
Well, no, there's a little bit of strategy here, and you're dealing with two different factories.
I'm busting your balls here.
Yeah. So we can go through the whole little, goofy tidbit of two different cigars, two different factories, one name. That's what it is. So, so the Habano should arrive next week for you guys.
And is that going to be the same price points? Or is it slightly different? Okay.
Yeah, same price point. We've really tried to, sorry to get off on this tangent a little bit, but we've really tried to have the Mil Diaz Habano, which was the original, and then you have Mil Diaz Maduro. Those are the same price points.
Okay.
And then so we come out with Coroneta Habano and Coroneta Maduro, and both of them are the same price points too. Because for some reason, a lot of manufacturers, in my opinion, like to ramp up the price on a Maduro or whatever, but for us, it's the same price across the board.
I think that probably comes down to fermentation and aging time.
Yeah, for sure.
Tobacco needs to ferment, age a little bit longer, so there's more labor involved.
Yeah. But the Maduro, it kind of came later on when we were waiting to kind of launch Coroneta Habano, and we wanted to do something with this kind of sub brand in Crowned Heads with Ernie. And that's what kind of Ernesto and John had figured out, because the Habano is coming from Noxa or Oliva tobacco. So,
and remind everyone, is that Oliva cigars or is that Oliva tobacco?
No, it's Oliva tobacco.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, but it's not Oliva cigars.
Right.
But the name, it's in Crowned Heads fashion, and I like to be completely transparent, me. So it's a crazy name, but the storyline is that Coroneta derives from the word coronet, which stands for a small crown or relatively simple crown reserved for lower ranks of nobility. So I think that's kind of play on words or a play on the meaning.
The sizes too.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So you have the Earl, and then the Duke and the Baron. So
what do you think of the cigar, Nate? Sorry, that was about.
And you guys are smoking the Duke, right?
Correct.
Which Tinderbox has all three sizes. So
correct.
I
Not on the shelf. It's in the back right now. So this is something a what's new type of a walk into a cigar shop. Sometimes you do need to ask what's new.
Yes.
We haven't put them on shelves quite yet. Every humidor's got limited space for display, so that's one of those things. We're also holding on to certain cigars for July as well that I'm not going to get into tonight.
Okay.
But we may want to try to get him lined up maybe for around that time on a Wednesday if you and he are both available remotely.
I would love to.
Let's see if we can do it. I know schedules are tough with 1 day a week, but right now
Yeah.
July is fairly open. And that's at the end of July, the event. So let's
Yeah,
talk about that maybe tomorrow or the next day.
Okay. Yeah, we'll do that. You guys mind if I dabble in a little bit of that?
Go right ahead.
Don't mind.
Well, first off, on the appearance of the cigar, it is a very rough looking smoke externally on the outside. Like, it is not smooth. It's not something that you can sit there and just roll across the table and it just roll nice and smooth and even. There's going to be some bumps to it.
It almost looks like broadleaf.
Yeah. I think with that Pennsylvania tobacco in there, if it weren't for that leaf in this blend, I think this blend would fall flat.
Okay.
Because of the body.
Yeah, there's not the body of the flavor. There's not a lot to it, which I get that from not all, but I get that from a lot of Ernesto's stuff coming out of his factory.
Yeah,
I get that with a lot of his stuff. Like, there's a lot of times I smoke even his cigars, and it just kind of leaves me wanting more. I want more flavor, not necessarily more strength, more nicotine. Just I wish the flavor that was there was just a little bit more.
I found out, not to chime in too much, but I agree completely. Where like that, the La Historia line. I don't know what you call that anymore. I don't know what that series is called. I call it the original is La Historia. So the La Historia line, I feel as though there's a reason that was such a success for him, where you see a lot of the other EPC lines that just don't, at least from our viewpoint, my viewpoint, I'll speak for myself, just never really caught much traction as because of what Nate's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Solid cigars, nothing like standout. And then he puts out the La Historia, the Encore, the Pledge, the Allegiance, puts those out, and it's kind of like these are more noteworthy. Not to take anything away from Ernesto.
Right.
Met him once, maybe twice. Haven't really had conversations like you have with him, but it's almost like he's putting out core cigars for like your everyday consumer. Almost like, I hate to say it, but like online stuff where it's a little bit maybe a better deal and they're solid, but nothing crazy, like, oh my god, this is the best thing. I don't know.
Like
like the inch, like the what was the dark?
The dusk.
Yeah.
Some of his other the Connecticut that he did.
Like there's nothing wrong with them, but it's not like people kept coming back for him.
Yeah.
At least at Tinder Box, it's
no, I mean, I completely.
They're nothing like the ones that won accolades.
Yeah.
But then again, the ones that won accolades, the Pledge was the, air quotes, the highest rated cigar in Cigar Aficionado. And of the four, that's the one I like the least.
Right.
The La Historia is my favorite. We featured the Allegiance last year.
I love the Allegiance.
That was my second favorite. And then Encore was next. Yep. The Encore, medium body, but it just has a really good, smooth flavor to it.
Yeah.
And it got number one too.
Yeah, it was number the two that were number one are the two on the back end of my favorites.
And La Historia got number two.
Let's remember who's rating those though. Not talking down about Cigar Aficionado, but over the years, I would say at least my palate would not line up 100% with them. I like some of their ratings, and then others I'm just like, really, that's the one, you know what I mean, that you gave a number, whatever, 6.2 or whatever. I'm just like, oh, okay.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's funny that you. Sorry, go ahead, Nate.
We've done that in the shop where we've looked at one publication's top 25, and then another publication's. We're like, as a shop, we're like more in line with this smaller publication over here.
Right. No, I totally agree.
The other thing I notice about this cigar, and this is the second one I've had.
I didn't know you smoked it before.
I smoked one last week.
Okay.
This doesn't really hold an ash very well. This is a very loose, flaky ash. I'm getting a little bit of run on one side of mine, and I can tell it's just the way the tobacco settled in the blend. It's a little bit looser on one side of the cigar versus the other. That's going to happen. That's
I'm not having that experience, just for the record there as much.
Yeah. But no, I mean, it's a solid smoke. I I just wish there was more flavor. Like,
do you think it's missing depth?
Yeah, the flavor that's
spice,
there, the flavor that's there is decent.
Like, but it goes away.
It doesn't just finish. It doesn't sit there on your palate, and it's it's like throwing a jab. It's like or a feint, more than a jab. Or how about a feint?
No, I think there's more than that in it, but I get where you're coming from.
I mean, for me, that cigar the Coroneta Maduro reminds me of, to me, the Pledge a little bit.
Really?
And it's not because it's number one. It's because it reminds me of that same type of like black coffee, like bitterness to it, and where it kind of like, flutters away a little bit. But that's just me.
I had a quad espresso before I came here, so
yeah. But no, I agree. John said something the other day, I think on an Instagram post, and it's, we talked about it before the podcast, but it's like, people ask, what do you need or what do you want as far as the Habano or the Maduro? And it's kind of like asking, do you like, vanilla, cookie dough, or do you want like Rocky Road ice cream? That's kind of like, if people like Maduros, I think that they're going to really like the Coroneta Maduro because of that richness, really richness, in my opinion. But if you really like a creamy, nice, smooth smoke, I think that's going to be the Coroneta Habano. So
it's interesting. I'm trying not to sneeze here because I was about to say.
Did you get a pepper note? Yeah.
Oh, the finish is in the retrohale.
Yeah. Majorly.
It's when you first retrohale, and for those that don't know that, it's pushing the smoke through your nose, nasal cavity, without inhaling. But you get different flavors to go along with what's on your tongue and your palate, right in the mouth. I was doing that, and I was literally about to say, because I've done it a couple times, but whatever it was that time, I'm kind of like waiting to speak there, and at first it feels like it's going to be fairly consistent, like not a lot of like black pepper,
right?
But then there's a lingering. I don't know if you've had that at all, but there's like this lingering buildup there of all of a sudden it's like, it's not black pepper. There's some sort of
on the retro.
Yeah. Do a retro.
There's
like kind of just like let it kind of sit there, like don't really talk. Or
it reminds me of it reminds me of a campfire a little bit, like a very woody campfire.
Like the morning at a campfire, right? Where you're kind of
yeah.
Like it's still kind of smoldering from the evening before. You're up early. You have the morning there, and you're drinking a black coffee, right?
Yes. Yeah. Man, look how far you've come, Steve, with the descriptions on what a cigar experience.
Pulling the dark fruit notes.
Man. It's exciting to hear.
Person.
But I love it. It's creating an experience. I freaking love it, man. I completely agree with what you just said.
I think the smoke's not going to be for everybody. I'm interested to try the Habano. I think this smoke is filling.
You guys in the middle of it?
Yeah.
Are you guys? Yeah. Okay.
I am. Yeah, we both are.
It does change a little bit. That final third is kind of a change.
It seems that this is going to fill a spot in your portfolio because it is different, and I like that.
Yeah.
Because again, coming out with new cigars here and there every year, whatever it is, you guys were big. We've talked about it before, Jake. I think even before you worked with John Huber and the boys, is that you guys were big on the limited editions. And it was like almost like this growth period of the company where I know you started, everything was coming out of that Pichardo factory when you guys were working on that, with starting with the Juarez and then that was growing, Mil Diaz. And then that whole relationship kind of got strained and there was a shift of direction there. Still pumping out some of the limited releases, sizes. You're still doing that. But I feel you guys have, what I've seen in the last 2 years or so since you've been there, and maybe a little before that, is that there was a shift in more regular production cigars. And it's nice to see that because your portfolio seemed like it was kind of stagnant. And then it was all like, hey, we got this new relationship with Pichardo. We're going to just like pump shit out from Ace Prime. And and do all this. And then it was like, hang on, then it was more Ernie stuff. And now you got the Noxa stuff coming. And it's cool to see some more regular production cigars coming out of the portfolio. And I think this is something that, as I said earlier, it's nice to see and smoke something that may not be a go-to every day, but it's something that it's a new experience for smokers to try. And I think it's going to grab a hold of some certain cigar smokers.
Well, and I completely agree. And I'll add the fact that the branding, if you look at like La Veretta with, and I can go get boxes to show everybody, I should have brought them out, but if you look at the branding, like La Veretta has this beautiful, gloss black box with a velvet black back and like this gold leaf V on it. And then the biggest thing is like, if you look at where are we at?
Yeah, I'll blow you up here. Hang on a second here.
If you look at that band, I just took it away. But if you look at that band, that's basically the same type of band that's on the Coroneta, just in a different colorway. So more of this elegant type of styling, I think, is really, really important for crowned heads in the future. And I think that's something that, I don't think it's attributed to me. I think it's just attributed to the growth of the business and how crowned heads has grown since I've been involved with them. So, and I'm very lucky enough that since I've become a part of Crowned Heads and Honest Family Cigars, that I kind of have John and Miguel's ear, along with Mike Conder and Tim Osgener. So it's nice that they want to hear from the reps. And now that we have a full staff, which I think we mentioned last time I was on, it has kind of changed the game for us. So we're doubling production, we're doubling the amount of events that we're doing. And the company is growing extremely fast, even after being around for 13 years.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to see, and I hope people can appreciate that difference of going from this kind of like 90s chromed hearts era, like grunge era, to more of a elegant type of blue collar style cigar company. So that's just my take. That's just my take on what we're doing. We also do a lot of sales meetings anymore. And I think it helps a lot when you have a full roster and a full team, and we're growing. So it's exciting. But I think,
I was going to say, I think it's exciting to hear that because, not to mention any certain names, but I'm of the opinion, being in the cigar industry just from a retail standpoint, and I don't even own a shop. I've just been working in the industry for 11 years now, doing the show here in some fashion for 6 years, and we're at this age in general. I feel as though in this country at least, and then also it reflects in this industry, is that as some of the torches are being passed to the next generation, whether it be the patriarchs are handing down to the sons or the kids of the organization, or they're hiring in different staff, either from different industries or younger, people in decision-making skills. And it's so easy to see, especially with some of the snatching up of some of the boutique or, more boutique brands, that the corporate mentality is coming out, and it's a very, in my opinion, very large disconnect to the consumer. Whether you're shopping online, if you're going to brick and mortars, it's like,
I think it's a disconnect for the retailers too.
That's a big point of it too, is that, it's like you have people making decisions that don't go into your everyday retailer, which retailers, brick and mortar shops, whether you're a lounge, whether you're a store, whatever it might be, so vastly different. And it's like they're making these decisions today where it's just one size is supposed to fit all. You're supposed to buy a certain amount of product.
Yeah.
And also, now we've introduced this new ordering system, this new tech thing. And now it's the retailers are getting these apps to order shit on. And it's like, Where are we taking this?
It's like the people in charge of sales and stuff are people with MBAs, and they're not even cigar smokers.
Yeah, they may not even smoke cigars.
It's kind of
well, and they don't. That's the answer.
They may not smoke cigars, or they're like, oh yeah, no, I've been smoking cigars forever, and I've been smoking, whatever, and not saying bad about Davidoff, but like the Davidoff Lounge, like I'm from fucking Manhattan or whatever, and I've been smoking the Davidoff Lounge for the last 20 years, and it's like that is such a small fraction of what the cigar industry is, and it's like
they've been smoking a Millennium every weekend for the last like 5 years.
Yeah, if you're making this, and I think to a point you're selling widgets, but I mean when it comes to what you're saying, that's why it's so refreshing to hear that with a growing company, is that the owners are, first of all, I know John Huber especially is very active on social media. He responds to a lot of consumers, the direct customers that are buying your guys' product. But to hear that there's a lot of this back and forth and interaction between the levels of management, ownership, sales reps, and all that stuff, and hearing people out and having these open discussions, it's going to just really, I feel like, exponentially make your business continue to grow if you can keep up with the demand and that communication, because there's that huge disconnect to these. Yeah. I feel as though in this cigar industry that is just, it's just like it's very flat and dead and just not personal at all. Yeah. It's literally like, you should buy our product, and it's like, fucking why? Right. Exactly. You know what I mean? It's like, oh well, we got a rating. It's like, in what magazine? Yeah. Aficionado. Right. That's great. That's the biggest
Cigar
one.
Snob
that's
doesn't
fantastic.
Matter. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it's like, oh, like Half Wheel, and God bless Half Wheel. I get a lot of my information from their alerts and stuff like that. But it's like, I like a cigar. I look up the information just to do like a Tasty Tuesday for our shop, and it's like, I scroll down. And it's like, oh, I gave this cigar an 82, and you're like, reading your description didn't lead me to believe that at all. It's like you're saying how great this is, all this, and then you get to those after fat, and it's like, and you gave it an 82. Okay, I guess we shouldn't buy it because you just dog the shit out of it.
Yeah, exactly. No,
kind of a rant there, but that disconnect is just becoming more and more apparent, and it's frustrating from the retail side, because there really is no interest in what there's no interest in the customer and why they should smoke the product. They're jamming it down your throat, and it's like, if you can't get samples as a retailer, what's the point? Like, why am I buying that? Right. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have a rep like yourself, Jay, coming into the store and conversing with the retailer, with the retail shoppers, right? How are you supposed to push this stuff?
Well, and that's like, I got a text message from Miguel today, and it's about, I want to be able to service every account that I have the best to my abilities. However, I live in Ohio, and I can't be everywhere at once, no. and companies are still dealing with that. And I think it's a conversation with the owners, like what you said, Steve, where it's like, as long as people have an understanding and a transparency of what's going on, I think consumers and retailers can understand and then rely on the reps and the company because of that. Yeah. But if you don't do that, and you're just like, I just have to meet my quota for this year because I have to make a living, then it doesn't really matter at that point, right? Because you're not creating an experience with the consumer, and you're not creating a connection with the retailer, and therefore you're pissing everybody off. And meanwhile, and it just, at least that's like, I'm a cigar consumer too, right? So like that's right. And that's one thing that, like, being at Tinder Box taught me, and like Brian and you and everybody at Tinder Box, is like, just like, give people the options, be transparent on what the information is, know your shit. And if you do that, then good things will happen because of that. And it's just a shame that we're worried about. I get that there's a business, right? This is all a business. And I know I'm going off on a rant right now too, but it's,
I think much change. We do that on the show.
I think that this stuff needs to be said, even for our friends that are reps and in the industry, that it can't just be about the quotas. Like, that's not the reason why I got into cigars. I don't think that that's the reason why most people got into cigars. and it really needs to come from the heart, and all these cigars need to be made out of love. I know that's very romantic and sounds romantic, but in my opinion, that's true. It's true.
It's real nice. It's real nice sentiment there,
and I think to add on to that, like if a lot of people don't realize, like, the reps are really the forefront of a brand. They're the brand ambassadors. You may have the people that travel all around the country and do events, or you have the head of the company, but it really comes down to the people that are in shops every day, face to face with decision makers.
Right.
You guys have to have information that retailers and consumers want, and not every company has that. I know when I was a rep, I mean, my second week on the job, I got a call from a guy in another state. He's like, "Oh, how come you haven't been to my shop yet?" And I'm like, "It's my second week on the job." He goes, "So?"
Right, exactly.
And then a few months later, I'm traveling with the owner of the company, and I was like, "Hey, I'm going to be in your store next week with the owner of the company. I'm going to bring them by. What day works best?" Right. And the two of them sat down for an hour. Yeah. And that guy had a lot more respect for me after that conversation.
Correct.
Because all the questions that he had that he never asked me, he was finally able to get answers to. It's like, well, shit, if you ask me, I can ask people above me and get the information for you, because that's my job.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree completely.
Well, I look at it also, with this cigar, right? So Coroneta Maduro, it's like, if you don't have a Jake Sanders on the road, why would anyone buy it?
Correct.
Crowned Heads is a name. It's well known. I feel as though some of the even larger names are basically pumping out cigars, and they just expect you to buy it. It's almost there's this
because of their name or reputation.
Yeah, it's like people are going to ask for it. It's like, well, they haven't yet, and if they do ask for it, is this worth basically replacing something on the shelves to bring in something new?
Yeah.
Well, and I've even had conversations with national sales managers that were friends, and it's me just trying to gain knowledge too, more about my job, and it's those guys have a difficult job with the bigger companies, because they are trying to meet their board requirements, right? And their board is telling them that we need to meet this quota, and it's like, how sustainable is the idea to, if we want to pump out this new cigar, you have to buy so much of this, but if you don't want to buy that, then we're going to give you all this stuff for free to buy that stuff. Right. And it's like, how sustainable is it to buy so much to get free product? Because then you have to turn around next quarter or next month and do the same thing, and it's like, there's so many brands out there that what is separating us apart from the next guy? And I think that's what like Pete Johnson does. I think that's what John does with Crowned Heads. I think that's what all these Michael, Herklots and stuff like that is like, how are these brands doing something special to get that consumer and the retailer? Because, the retailer is the biggest thing. If I don't have in my opinion, if I don't have a sample, but I just come into the store and say, "Hey, you need to buy this.
Here's the sheet. Here's a picture of it."
Yeah, it's like, I know if I was a buyer, which I was at Burned by Rocky Patel in Indianapolis, why would I buy something or put something on our shelves that I've never smoked before? Right. I mean, that's our biggest question to ourselves, and that was my biggest point when we had our sales meeting in February with with Mike Conder and John and Tim, was that we can't do a lot of these pre-orders anymore. Yeah. In my opinion, I notice a big jump in sales from pre-order sales to when I actually get bundled samples and get my ass on the road and go into shops, and then I'm actually creating an experience with that retailer, and they're like, "Oh, this shit's actually really good." Mm-hmm. And then they can sell that to their consumer, and I think that's the big disconnect that you're talking about, Steve, is that if you don't have that connection with the retailer, they can't sell it to the consumer.
Right.
I see that every single day in my job in different industry. but I see that every single day.
It's just, hey, spend this money, and then it's your job to sell it. And it's like, it's not sustainable. The only way that it's sustainable is with the right limited editions, mark that word, right, because you can't do what, we did and what a lot of other companies did. And like, before I was brought on with Crowned Heads and do that. But the fact that the consumers were always asking what was new is what led the industry to get to that point. But once it goes off the rails, it's like you got to pull it back a little bit and bring some new life into a core line, because if somebody likes that and you only have 10 boxes of it, then you're shit out of luck.
Right.
And they got to find something else, and they'll go to another brand and spend their money with another brand.
Mm-hmm. You also have the option, sometimes when we talked about this with what was the Midsummer Nights Dram.
Yeah, Midwinter Nights Dram.
Midwinter, sorry. It's midsummer right now. I'm sweating.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you like you guys, it's like the one that I think really you've been doing the longest, to my knowledge, is the even before the Mule Kick, was the Las Calaveras.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yep. Which we have a new one coming out.
People don't understand that every year that's a gamble. You're putting out something with a name that people have trusted. Well, if they smoke it and they don't care for that Las Calaveras,
right,
you're possibly shooting yourself in the foot for next year.
Yeah,
and that's where it's going to be tough.
Yep.
You got to watch that. That's anytime you guys release one. You put something like Coroneta Maduro out, say it doesn't go over very well. You lose a little bit of credibility from some of your fans too. You're like, wow, this wasn't it from them. I'll go back to the tried and true, which is still good for you guys.
Right.
In a way, you're not cannibalizing your own portfolio, but at the same time, it's kind of like, well, now you're going to start putting out new products, and people might be real hesitant just because they don't care for the one before it. So, I mean, that's always a gamble. And
with the Las Calaveras too, and I think with most industries, as we're talking about it, is that the big thing is to have the consistency, much like when Steve and I were talking about Bourbon and BS podcast and being consistent on, every Wednesday. And I know for like the first couple of years, like we were like adamant about doing it on Wednesday and like what time we were doing. And then we adjusted the times due to like you and I's, lives. But I think after a certain point, people now know with Las Calaveras that, they may not like it for that year, but now it's a conversational piece,
sure,
because it's like, well, I like this year and I really love this year. And then, I didn't really care for that year. And I think that's what makes it cool, because we've been doing it for 10 years. So,
yeah, I think you guys have a tough job. Sales is always a tough thing, especially when you're offering new stuff all the time. I look at the just even what you had said, you liked it, but I mean, you go into a retailer and you're now pitching the cigar. It's not that say they smoke Connecticut Shade all the time. You know what I mean?
Right.
How do you sell? What was the wrapper on this again?
Mexican San Andreas.
So how do you sell a San Andreas wrapped cigar that also has Pennsylvania broadleaf to someone that smokes a Connecticut Shade Dominican blend? I mean, like it's you have to really try to paint a picture. You got to say, all right, this is why we like this. Looking at your humidor, I see you've got the Connecticut Shade market pretty much not locked down, right? I mean, it's like you obviously like it. A lot of your customers like it because you like it, and you've got a lot of options. But this is something that doesn't really repeat itself in your humidor. So it's always something that some of your consumers might like this. If you look at a humidor in a shop and you're like, all right, so this is kind of in the realm of what you have on the shelf, but it's different. How does that sell for you? And if they say pretty good, it's like, well, that's something that maybe you should. Or you could think about bringing in a few boxes, as opposed to what you're talking about, the pre-sale, where it's you got to buy X, X, and X. It's like you got to buy all this stuff, and they're gonna be like, I don't want to buy 7 or 9 or whatever boxes. I just
right.
Like let's just try a couple boxes and see how the customers that come in asking for those suggest this as something new and see what they say.
Well,
I'll follow up and a few weeks after you get those boxes in. If they didn't do well, that's fine. If they did do well, place another reorder or see where it goes from there. I mean, it's not really.
There's a bunch of different, right? And there's a bunch of different tactics on like how to do that as far as like creating an experience. And there's different ways that I think. I mean, I'm not I'm not perfect, and I have a lot to learn still. But in that regard, I would think of a way to hold an event with something new, or try to have a locker members event, where we sample out a bundle to the staff, legally, since we're allowed to do that.
Yeah.
And then that's how that word gets put out,
Right.
So it's, and I think a lot of bigger companies are dropping the ball on things like that. So
I would agree with that. Yeah, and not to go down that road too much, but I mean, we kind of talked about that a little bit or 2 weeks ago or whatever. It's like there are some companies out there that are just flat out buying, like, you got to buy 4 sizes of this blend
and 4 boxes on back order. Yeah. So
yeah,
you got to keep
So like your first order's got to be 80 boxes. It's like, no.
Nobody can do that. I mean, honestly, like, besides
no one has room in a humidor like that, right? I mean, it's just not not feasible. What's that?
I know my humidor doesn't.
It's one of those things. That's, again, I think where the important part is listening to the reps out there, and not listening to the reps that just keep coming up with like excuses why they're not selling. Obviously, that's the management side of it. But man, there was a time, and again in the last 10 plus years, where there were a lot more sales managers or people from the company, big and small, doing ride-alongs, and maybe they don't do it as much or to our shop here in Columbus, but man, you got to see the difference between like where you were before Burn Lounge and a Tinder Box at Easton, and and off the road, small destination shop. You got to see everything in between, because it's like, do we make the decision that we're only aiming towards lounges, only aiming towards high traffic, only aiming towards the ones that have 30 stores that we're going to try to get in all of those because they order big? Or do you say, okay, we're going to focus on that? And you hear the A, B, C, D accounts and all that stuff, but how much effort is being made towards ones where it's like, as a rep, you're looking at shops, you're like, I don't go to that because it's so small. And it's like, touch base with them. You know what I mean? That's a phone call. That's a once a year visit. It's a, hey, I was in the area, I just want to see how business is going. You know what I mean? I don't know if you remember me. I'm Jake from Crowned Heads, and I got a couple smokes if you have time to sit down and smoke and all that stuff. And you just work those relationships, and those I feel as though, again, I'm kind of on that rant still, but the sales manager disconnect, or the owner disconnect, or the corporate, even worse, any industry. It's like, again, you don't even smoke cigars, so why are you making these decisions from an office when you haven't been in a cigar shop or even hung out with cigar smokers?
Correct. Yeah.
In a year.
Yeah, exactly.
It kind of goes back to when you brought up that example of like someone in charge or higher up in a company, like their experiences, the Davidoff Lounge in Manhattan. Like when I was,
nothing wrong with it, just an example.
Yeah, but when I was a rep, my new sales manager was from Boston, and he had always been in that area. Mm-hmm. And then I take him out to the Midwest, and like he couldn't get over how different like the cities were, the people, the shops, the lounges, like how they did business, how they were set up. Like
every place is different.
It was so vastly different. He's used to shops where everyone walking in is wearing a suit and tie, and he's going out to a shop where a guy walks in wearing muddy overalls and work boots.
Right.
and actually saying hi to him in the elevator. And he's like, what the fuck is this? Like,
you're not going to want to hear this, anyone listening, probably, because it's not a dig on it, but from, it's like Craig Sanston out here. Like, don't take this the wrong way. Anyone that hangs out in lounges or cigar shops or regulars, love that part of the business. But we joke about it a lot when a customer comes in, and they come in, say, once a month, once every other week or something like that, and they buy a box of cigars or two and drop, whatever it is, $300-400. And they're like, all right, well, see you in a couple weeks. And you're like, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. And it's like, if we had cigar smokers, if we had 100 of those customers, the business would go crazy. But that's where it's like, we're not that corporate feel. It's like you want and need those buyers. You need the guys that come in once a week for one cigar. You need the people that are there 5 days a week, and they spend $50 to $100 every week. We got guys that come in right now. I think he's a newer regular, doesn't hang out. He buys a house handmade from J.C. Newman once about 5 days a week. So some people look at that and he's like, what did he buy? I'm not going to worry about it. There's a spammer on there. Susan Morris, go fuck yourself. But no one wants to be in your bourbon enthusiast group. All right, go start your own podcast, please. But it's it's those, you want all that. This guy comes in, he drops $6, and people are like, did he only buy a $6 cigar? He's like, yeah, no, that's Alex. He comes in like 5 days a week. It's everything. You know what I mean? It's you want that. I think. And anyways,
I agree completely.
People don't understand, I guess, that side of what actually makes the lights stay on. You know what I mean? And
yeah. I mean, we used to talk about. I mean, I learned a lot from you and Brian and everybody at Tinder Box, and that's what you guys taught me. And I think that translates to being a rep, very well too, because that's what you see. I know we all know a lot of people in the industry, so I won't like speak ill will of anybody, but I think to say that, I'm not going to go to this place due to this issue or whatever is kind of cutting yourself short.
Right.
Because you can build any relationship back depending on what, whether it's your visits or whatever. I mean, it takes, instead of seeing 5 or 6 or 7 accounts that day, why don't you spend an extra hour and sit at the one that you want to grow, for 2 hours, and just
put a little time in there.
Yeah, and just do a small cut and light. I mean, it's the artist's suggestion. It can be impromptu. Ask the manager or the owner about doing it that day, and just go in and say, hey, I really want to build this relationship, or let me come in and I'll work the humidor for like a couple 3 hours, and let's get the old stuff off the product. I know people will like these cigars, and I'll give you a bundle, and we can do a 3-in-1 for the next couple hours and be good. It's not, and the companies that aren't doing that, I think, will fall short in the end, going forward.
Yeah, I agree.
So
let's touch base on this whiskey. No, I mean, actually, that's funny, because that was actually, for me, that was a compliment on Crowned Heads about 20 minutes ago or whatever it was. And it kind of went down a
yeah.
There, right? You guys are doing so much well, and then we just kind of like picked apart like some part of the industry of what we think that is being going down the wrong path.
Well, you got to bitch a little bit. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Path of totality.
When companies make it tough for the customers, which can be retailers, when it makes it tough for customers, and that goes also from brick and mortar shops and the end line consumer, when businesses make it tougher for you to support them, that's a problem that unfortunately I don't think gets recognized quick enough.
No,
partially because of short-sightedness, being just tone deaf, or even just ego. And I think that's a problem with any industry, obviously, but this is no exception. So
I agree completely.
Firing up another one.
Yeah, I mean, what are we? Hour 6 minutes?
Yeah,
in? It burns up a little quick for me.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about Hayner.
Whiskey.
Hayner, yes.
Hayner. Pam.
You got it. Nate, go ahead.
So this is the Hayner Path of Totality, is what this one is called.
Okay.
So Hayner Distillery was originally established in 1866 in Troy, Ohio, down along the Ohio River. At one point, it was actually the number one selling distillery from Ohio. And at one point, they actually used to ship, and they were the largest whiskey shipper through the mail of any company in the U.S.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
And then Prohibition happened in 1920.
Yeah, it really threw a kink in a lot of people's businesses there, too.
Yep, it did. They shut down. They have since reopened in 2021. The two gentlemen that reestablished the brand were able to find and get their hands on some original Hayner bourbons, and then basically kind of reverse engineered to make their bourbon staple that they have. And then they also have rye. They do a 6-year. But yeah,
is there another city named Troy? You said it was down by the river. Isn't there a Troy like north of Dayton?
Well, they were originally established in.
Oh, my bad.
I should say along the Ohio River.
So Troy's where they're based out of
Troy's
now.
where they're at now.
Got it. My bad.
You're gonna turn this on for the conversation.
I was going to.
I feel like it'd be nice as you're describing it.
So this bottle was released earlier this year, and they called it the Path of Totality because of the eclipse that came through back in April. So while they make their own juice for this one, they actually sourced a 10-year Kentucky bourbon. That is you want to take a guess on the mash bill, Steve?
Hang on. I will say, because we'll get to the pairing here in a minute, but the cigar definitely overpowers it.
Mm-hmm. Because this is the first time I've had it.
I feel like it's a little lighter, but again, that could be the cigar.
Okay. That's why I waited to light up the cigar. I had a few sips of this first.
Yeah. I'm going to ask a question first.
Go ahead.
Is there wheat in the mix?
No.
Okay. I'd say higher corn then.
Yes.
I will go 75 corn.
78.
Oh my gosh.
78 corn, 13 rye, 9 malted barley.
I wasn't done, but all right.
Why even bother? Why even bother with the malted barley there?
Well, because you have to have some malted grain in it.
Yeah, you got to have the starch
for the fermentation. You have to have some sort of malted grain in there.
Why even bother with the rye then?
So with this bottle, they only produced 1,500 bottles, and it was only available in Ohio in 29 liquor agencies.
I just want to see this thing.
And all 29 liquor agencies were picked because they were in the path of totality for the eclipse.
So we were, because we were like 99% or no?
So Carfagna's had this, and we sold the shit out of this prior to the
You
eclipse.
guys were 100%, right?
Yeah, we were 100%. It comes in at 100 proof. Again.
No, I get it.
There it is.
We all get it.
And then a couple cool marketing things with it. They actually have this black plastic on the bottle, so like you can't even see the liquid except through the bottom. So it's
I get it.
So it's completely blacked out.
You're following along now. Here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Here we go.
Ready?
Here it is.
Should we shut the lights off for this?
Do they make a Northern Lights bottle?
So the label actually
looks like a moon. Oh, it lights up.
So it looks like the sun does when the moon's in front of it.
Wow. Holy shit.
So, and when they sent it out, they actually had to tell agencies, like, don't turn the lights on because you'll kill the battery.
Yeah, it's got like
you can't just pry this thing open and replace the battery.
You can rip it off there.
So you could do that, but so once the battery dies, that's it. So it was one of those where you're supposed to save it until the actual day of the eclipse.
Or power outage.
Or just walk around in their house and lighten your way.
Honey, where are you? The lights are out. I'm going to get the flashlight. You come up with a bottle of bourbon.
Yeah, I got my whiskey.
Where are the glasses?
But it only lights up on the outer edge. And then on the back was this QR code that they...
Huge QR code.
Yeah, it makes it real easy for your phone to read. But around it says augmented reality. So if you scanned it, it would actually take you to a web page that had a picture of the bottle. And like as you move your finger, it would change the angle you were looking at of the bottle.
A high-tech brand.
And the agencies that had it would have posters on the wall that showed like the phases of the eclipse. And then right during the total would be this with the light turned on. So like that was the totality aspect of it.
Is there a button on there, or are you just clicking
there's actually a power button down here.
Okay.
So like you can hear it.
Yeah. Well, don't keep it on the whole time because it'll.
So this was one that when it came out and leading up to yes, it was a little gimmicky, but
very gimmicky.
Very gimmicky.
Did this hit the shelves like right before? Did this hit the shelves?
This came out about 2 months before the eclipse.
Whoa. Okay.
So like I said, 1,500 bottles. It came out a couple months before, and we were selling it really well. And then once the eclipse occurred, it definitely slowed down.
That makes
so
sense,
much,
right? That makes sense.
So much
marketing
so,
flaw there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they were hoping to be able to sell 1,500 bottles because there was such a huge hubbub about the eclipse coming through.
Right.
I mean, you had people, going across country to get Airbnbs just to be in the path of it.
Yeah, exactly. Then we had tornadoes come through.
Yeah.
It's been a weird year.
It has been.
It's really weird.
So when this came out, this was $89.95.
Damn.
And at the beginning, like I said, we were selling at least a case a week of this.
Holy crap. How old is it? What'd you say earlier?
It's a 10-year.
Oh.
It's a 10-year, but they don't tell you where in Kentucky it's sourced from.
It just says from Kentucky.
Yes.
Probably Hill.
It could be. Who knows?
I would bet money on it.
At the beginning of June, the state actually dropped the price on it in order to get rid of the last few remaining bottles. So there are some still out there.
What'd they drop it to?
$69.95.
Oh shit!
So they dropped it $20.
Wow.
When's the next eclipse come through? I forget. It's like 20
like
years.
70 years, something like that.
Well, through here, yes,
Yeah.
but then there's another one coming through. I think a different part of the states, right?
Like I think 7 years or something like that.
Is it? Yeah.
Well, you could splatter paint it with like pink and green.
Okay.
And then resell it and make some type of black light thing on it and make it look like the Northern Lights, because apparently we're supposed to have another solar flare. So there you
That'd
go.
be cool.
Yeah, we did have the Northern Lights.
You're welcome, Hayner.
Yeah, we did have the Northern Lights come through a few weeks ago, and
there
were a lot of people that went outside and they were like, I don't see anything. It's like, well, if you take a picture, it was weird. You take a picture of the sky with your phone, you'd actually see it a lot better. It was,
you're right.
Yeah. I know where we were at. We're sitting there going, I don't really see much. And then you take a picture and you look at your phone, you're like, oh shit.
Well, did you have the eclipse glasses? Oh, you're talking about the Northern Lights?
Yeah.
So
like that.
That was in our backyard.
That's beautiful.
But it actually looked like that out here,
Oh, nice. Yeah, you're a little further out.
Out in the sticks.
Well, I was gonna say you don't have to deal with as much light pollution as we do here.
Like right with the house. Look like aliens were coming.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Again.
Again.
Yeah, if they had the budget, the only thing that can make that, I think, gimmicky-er, I don't think that's a word, but you know what I mean, is if you had like Total Eclipse of the Heart start playing.
Well,
when you hit the button, or you hit it once, it's a light, and you hit the second time, and the song starts playing, and then
so
like
there was actually
greeting
like a greeting card, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like your Hallmark cards do have like a little sound to it when you open it.
So there was actually a local radio station that 2 hours before and 2 hours after, because that was like the whole duration, start to finish of the eclipse, they were playing songs related to it. So yes, they were playing Total Eclipse of the Heart. They were playing Eclipse by Pink Floyd.
Spotify had
Dark Side of the Moon.
Spotify had like the Eclipse playlist.
Oh yeah,
it's all Pink Floyd, just like.
Yeah. So what do you think of this? This is the first time having it, right?
Yes.
It's 10 years old. I bet it's pretty good, right, guys? No.
So it's very corn heavy, very corny.
Corn.
There's that corn water aspect to it.
I don't know if it's a cigar, but I don't get that kind of almost like nasty corn finish.
No, you don't
reliable here.
No, you don't get that. But the first several sips I took before I ever lit up the cigar, and it was just that corn essence up front. Like a lot of times when we talk about a whiskey tasting like corn water, a lot of it happens on the finish.
Even at 10 years old, though?
Yeah.
Jeez, that's crazy.
This one's more up front.
Yeah.
That's surprising.
I wouldn't say it's like that mellow corn by any means.
Oh, God, no.
That's where I'm saying it's not as like in your face of it.
Or what was the other one we had recently that we said?
Well, mellow corn's 100%.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Well, that's the thing, though. We've had a local made bourbon that's 100% corn that tastes less corny than this does.
Yeah. I just can't imagine, like, even with it 10 years, I should have went and got one. But, yeah.
Well, and this was the last bottle that Carfagna's had on the shelf, and I was like, yeah, you know what? Go ahead and get it.
All right. I think this is, I mean, for $89, that's where that's a little gimmicky, right? Like I would be very hesitant to purchase this except for having fun with it.
Yeah.
But it's a nice lighter pour. I would say
even for 100 proof.
Yeah, it doesn't taste 100 proof by any means.
No.
But I mean, it's
very corny.
The whole thing is.
That's why it's 75 or 78%.
Right. But overall, actually, it's for 69, again, it's that price point does get up there. It is fun. I mean, you can tell probably why it was selling. Yeah, for $90, that's a tough one. But if they only bought 1,500 of these custom buttons on there.
Well, I tell you, I mean, people would come in. So this was something
pretty cool.
This was something that never made it onto the regular shelves. It was always.
I think I broke it. Oh no,
you're fine. It was always behind the registers on the display shelves there, because that's where every single bourbon person comes in and looks at first.
Yeah.
So you'd have people come in going, "What's new? I want to get a gift for people."
Yeah.
You show them the bottle. You tell them it's Hayner. They don't know what that is, where they're at. Yeah. They don't know any of the history. You turn on the freaking light and they're like, "Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I'll take one."
So you did that on a regular basis, like in the store to show people?
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, why not? He's a salesman.
I sold a shit ton of these banana bottles.
Yeah, duh. And he's up in Polaris, so it's like
Vision box. Crown Head should have a resurgence of a light up box.
No,
we should do a what was the
Tell Tim to get on that.
Yeah, what was the spin-off of Sopranos?
The Consigliere.
Well, no, what was the movie that they did? The Saints of New York or Saints of New Jersey or whatever. We should do a Saints of or just call it Tony or something.
Just call it Mafia.
Mafia. Yeah. That
would sell.
Mafioso.
Yeah.
All right, let's do the ratings here, guys. So this is where we do towards the end of part one. And Jake, thanks for being a part of this tonight and these cigars. Good luck with it with Crowned Heads, obviously, with the launch of this. We are smoking the Coroneta Maduro. The Habanos should be hitting shelves soon.
Yes.
Not a huge quantity to my knowledge of the Maduros out there, but a lot of the pre-sales or like obviously the early shops that got in on it, they should be either on the shelves or in the humidors. So check it out if you guys have not seen it yet.
Yes.
If you have a brick and mortar nearby, or obviously Tinder Box at Easton here in Columbus, Ohio, if you're local where we are, check those out. They are available right now. The Habanos should be shortly, but that's what we're smoking tonight. The whiskey, we were just talking about the Hayner
Path of Totality.
Path of Totality. I was going to say Total Eclipse, but
that'd be too easy.
But yeah, that's what we're drinking tonight and the pairing. So we do 10 out of 10 ratings.
But even the lid and the cork are all black.
Yeah, I mean they
went all in.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that bottle that wine guy did from like California. I forget what that's called, but he did those. He was from Sonoma.
Dave Finney that does Orange Swift and does Burning Chair.
Yes, Burning Chair. That's exactly
so
what it was.
The original Burning Chair bottles were that like frosted black.
Yeah, they're like a matte black
finish. They have now gone to clear glass bottles on those, and then they also have glass corks on them.
Got it.
And then he also just came out with a new brand available in Ohio called Savage and Cook that are 2 bourbons and a rye that are finished in different wine barrels from his wineries.
Interesting. All right, Nate, the whiskey. What do you got?
7 on the whiskey.
7, even with the lights.
I'm taking the whiskey at the juice.
Okay.
Whiskey at the juice. I'll give it a 7. I love the marketing behind it. I love the marketing. It sells it. I know. I mean, now that we're 2 months past the eclipse, yes, we're all laughing about it and it being corny.
Oh, I would have laughed at it 2 months ago, but I get what you're saying.
But I mean, that's the thing. Like, so here you have a small distillery in Ohio that's only been around now for a few years after relaunching. They go out and they buy, a few barrels of 10-year Kentucky bourbon.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously being 10 years old, you're gonna pay for it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
There's a new video that's been going around that we've seen about the new made taxes that some of these distilleries have to pay.
The state tax.
Yeah, and so I mean, some are federal too. Like you're talking, like Brown-Forman pays close to $4 million a day just in taxes every time they put whiskey into a barrel.
Yeah,
so
that's crazy.
So so that kind of explains, especially since they're sourcing it. So obviously, the distillery already put all the money and time into distilling this and sitting on it, and then here comes another party buying that barrel, and now they're going to bottle it, do this kind of marketing. They got to make their money back somehow. And a lot of times we talk about distilleries even putting out their own juice. A lot of times you see that $8 to $10 per year kind of price point. So 10-year under $100 with this kind of marketing thrown into it, being sourced from another distillery, it's something that they could have probably had to charge higher. So they probably got a deal on some barrels. Like I said, only 1,500 bottles and 29 agencies in the entire state. That's it. So I think it's something, if you like that lighter profile whiskey and there's still some of these out there, since the price has come down $20, I'd say go for it.
Yeah.
I'd say if you see this bottle, because it's something you're never going to have again, if you see the bottle, go out and get it. Because I think it does punch below the proof. I think it's
easy drinking for sure.
Yeah, I think because of that mash bill and having that higher barley content in it, because a lot of times we see like 4, 5, 6% malted barleys. This one's at 9, so that kind of softens it up a little bit. There's not a whole lot of spice from the rye in there, so I think it's a decent bottle. 89, a little bit of stretch, 69.95. Yeah, go ahead and pull the trigger on the bottle. It's solid, not super complex of a whiskey, but it's an easy sipper.
Easy sipper. How about the cigar for you? Coroneta Maduro.
So the cigar, we talked about it, I think, before.
You got the Baron size there, right?
Yeah, I'm now smoking the Baron, which is that 6x56.
Yeah.
And this is the size I had smoked the first time. And we had talked about this is in that like between the three sizes, it's in that like $12 to $15 price point, not taking in excise tax and stuff like that at other shops or states. But I talked about before, like coming out of that EPC factory, it just leaves me wanting more. It's good smoke. I'm a little picky because I like things a certain way. Like I would love if this could hold an ash longer.
Yeah.
It's got good flavor. I wish the flavor was pumped up a little bit, but it's not a bad smoke. It's a solid cigar.
I'm so surprised because like when we smoked it in Nashville, like the first time I had it, even at PCA, like I could hold an ash pretty well on the one that I had. So, but each cigar experience is different. So.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to trying the Habano when it comes in.
Yeah.
This one, it's a little bitey. It's got a little. When I've smoked this, I get a little bit of tongue bite from this one, and I think that's
the whole way through, or just towards the end,
halfway and on.
Okay.
And I would attribute that to that Mexican San Andreas wrapper, giving that bite.
Okay.
That tongue bite a little bit. I give it a 7.5 on the cigar.
That's 2 7.5s.
No, 7 on the whiskey.
7.5. How about the pairing?
7.5.
I think that leaves you at a 7.
I think the pairing. I think the pairing's a 7. I think the cigar
nailed it.
The cigar overpowers. The cigar overpowers the whiskey, but going back to it brings out more of the corn. Like the corn's now a little intensified on the palate. And sometimes when we do the pairings, going one way or the other, sometimes it'll bring out more sweetness. This one, it's just more that corn dominant flavor that comes out.
For me, the whiskey, I appreciate the marketing, right? You figure they 1,500 bottles.
Yep.
And with that, I'm sure they didn't spend a ton of money, but on the light up button, you have the website with the augmented reality, which I have not checked out yet. I would imagine this was designed obviously for fun. This was designed by a creative. I don't know who would go to all that trouble, but I mean, there's no description on the bottle. So I mean, for a lot of, I feel like some bourbon drinkers, it's full of gimmick, right? You have to go to the website to see. Nate's on it right now. I mean, it's just, does it spin the bottle? That's it. Would this have worked differently if it was the night of the eclipse? I wonder if this is like because it's night here. Now you see the bottle up in the air where it's night. I don't know.
Oh, geez.
But you put a lot of this thought into the idea behind it. The juice is, I mean, I'll give it, I mean, for what it is, yeah, I'm like a 7.5. I mean, it's easy drinking. It's nothing too complex. If this was not gimmicky and it was just a 10-year Hayner bottle, you'd be like, it was okay. It was good. You know what I mean? But for $90, there's a lot out there, right?
So the other thing with that QR is when you're on the QR page, if you hit, there was an AR in the top corner. So if you shined your camera up towards the sky during the eclipse and you hit that button, it would then show the bottle in the sky on your screen.
So I mean,
so it would replace the actual eclipse with this.
Oh my God.
So you're missing the eclipse looking at your phone, looking at the Hayner website.
I think we've established that like nobody cares
by holding it up to the eclipse.
You missed the once in a lifetime viewing of an eclipse for Hayner.
We're just cynical, Steve.
No, honestly, I think that's. I mean, it's all there. I mean, this is kind of what we've talked about before. I feel like this is someone designing all this stuff, and it's purely for fun, and it's not has nothing to do with the whiskey, right? I mean, there's
the question is Nate, did you guys sell out of this?
Yes.
Oh, we sold out of it like every single week.
Yeah.
So you guys did your part. So it worked.
It did. It absolutely worked. And then we ended up getting, like, I would say the next case took about 2 weeks, 3 weeks after the eclipse to sell. And then we had been sitting on the last case of it for probably the last month.
Yeah.
And then,
but in 20 some years from now, that would have sold.
Yeah. And then, like I said, at the beginning of June, OHLQ changed the price on a bunch of items. Some went up, some went down. This one went down $20. We had 3 bottles at the start of the month, and someone came in last Thursday and bought 2 out of the 3.
Yeah. And Dimmix's last case of what? The Hayner
Path of Totality.
That's right. I think it's an easy sipper, so that's why I'm going to still give it a 7.5. I think it's a pleasant bottle. I mean, again, it is corn heavy, but I mean, it's a nice sipper, lighter. Great for a night like tonight where it's 72, feeling like 90 in the garage right now for me.
Yeah, humidity.
Got a little bit of a breeze because we had some rain come through, so the humidity is dropping a little bit. But I mean,
when you worked out too, right? So you got that. Got the juices flowing and
got the juices flowing, drinking some juice here. The cigar, I'm actually going to comment on this. Nate, I am surprised at your rating because this is very much like black coffee. And I know you're a big coffee guy, but I also know that you're big on the Black Rifle coffee.
Yes.
And I know there's different, flavor profiles
from
the different
countries, different sorts.
This is just straight that, like I said it earlier, it's like that morning of the campfire, still smoldering. You got a little bit of the ash and smoke, kind of like the smell, and you're sipping on just straight, normal coffee, not necessarily like I don't know if that's designer coffee or whatever you want to call it.
Cowboy coffee.
Yeah, this is just like, like you put a full filter of like just Folgers dark roast. You know what I mean? Like they're like, just put like a, like whatever, 2 tablespoons. And you're like, I just have this big scoop. So I'm just going to do this.
Yeah.
And it's just like super in your face, a little bitter. if you like for this, the way I'm going to sell it, and to consumers, what's new, or if it's on the shelf, it's do you drink black coffee? Do you like coffee straight up, or do you like espresso, whatever? If you like that flavor, this cigar is definitely something for you to try, in my opinion. So a rating on for what you guys, I think the intention with this blend would be, I'll give it an 8. But I mean, for a lot of people that maybe smoke, like when the Habano comes out and they're like, I'm more like medium bodied or whatever, I like a little bit of spice, that I wouldn't recommend the Coroneta Maduro. This is something for those black coffee drinkers, someone that likes that. It's nice. The wrapper is a little bit kind of rustic, but it's a dark, oily wrapper.
Oh, it's very oily.
Dark. So when people come in, that we do have cigar smokers, customers that come in and they're like, I just like something really like bold and oily wrapper. This is it, man.
Yeah, for sure.
This is your cigar. If you come back to me and say, oh, it's just a little bit, too bold and had a little bitterness to it, and it's like, well, that's what it is. That's what you're going for. So I think it's, again, nice in the portfolio of crowned heads. I think it's a good fit for something different. And going back to it, anytime you see the Pennsylvania broadleaf in a blend, you're going to get a bit of that. So I mean, that's as you continue to try different things as a cigar smoker, and you educate yourself on blends and things like that. If you see Pennsylvania broadleaf, if you're not a big person on, like, I think black coffee, it's typically going to hit your palate a little bit odd. Yeah. The pairing, the pairing is a 6, man. This was not a good pairing, just because I thought the cigar overpowered the higher corn content of this 100 proof, because we keep saying it drinks a little lighter than 100 proof even. So I mean, the fact that it's a little bit lighter blend of bourbon, the mash bill, not blend, but you know what I mean, the mash bill, it's a lighter drinking whiskey. I feel as though this cigar was not the greatest. For me, it's, I like black coffee and I like an easy sipping whiskey, so it's good for me going back and forth, but the cigar overpowers the whiskey in this on my palate.
I can imagine.
So that's why I give it a lower rating of 6, just because it's like they're not meant for each other on this.
They don't work.
No. So what do you want to rate? I know you're not smoking it, but what do you think of the Coroneta Maduro?
I would put the Coroneta Maduro at like an 8 for me, for my flavor profile. I think the ones that I've smoked, I'm actually waiting, on my bundles and stuff to smoke it again. So had some at PCA back in March, and John gave me a couple, and I like the Maduro. But it's, I'll give it an 8 because of the construction, and I love the band, and I love the box. The box, I can go get it when we start the second half just to show people on the video feed. But the box is this flat black with this nice gold inlay, and it has Coroneta with the red there and everything. So I think that, Nate or whoever posted the picture on Instagram did a good job. So.
Well, that was Content Kyle.
Yeah, shout out to Content Kyle for doing that. He did great shots.
Posted that earlier today, or a few hours before the podcast.
Like, that's the top of the box.
It's very regal, I would say.
Yeah, so you have the kind of the strawberry leaves for that design, and then you have the red sticker there, and then you have this beautiful, like black box with that design with Coroneta on the inside of the box. So
very elegant.
Yeah, I think so. I think it speaks to like the new age of crowned heads and us growing, like we talked about earlier. But I would stick it at an 8. Flavor profile is good, but I don't know if I could, for my flavor profile, smoking this a lot would probably not be on my radar. You know me, I kind of stick around that medium to full. I'd still say this is medium to full, but with those black espresso notes. I'm not a huge coffee guy, especially black coffee, but I think the construction's there. I think it's coming from a great factory. I think it's coming from Ernie and all the great tobaccos that he's kind of cultivated over the years. So it's exciting. I think for me, the Coroneta Habano is the big showstopper. So as far as the pairing. Yeah. So
Absolutely.
not to deter the listeners and the viewers from Coroneta Maduro, but I think it was one of those mindsets of the fact that these two blends are for the masses because it is a core line. So you can pick between, if you are a Maduro guy, you can have the Maduro. If you are a Habano guy and a medium body guy, you can have the Habano. So,
yeah. Very good. Very good. Well, we appreciate it and look forward to seeing, as things go forward, always the Habano from the Coroneta and everything else coming out from Crowned Heads. So if you guys have not tried many of the Crowned Heads portfolio, I would definitely recommend. You guys are using some of the best, hottest factories, I think, right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Blending with some of the best, some of the legends like Ernesto Perez Carrillo, and obviously the Noxa factory. Yeah. And who else?
And even a Radio Pichardo at Takanixa. So, I mean, like the Mil Diaz, and he crushed it with the Mil Diaz Maduro. And we apologize for the lateness of that stuff getting out from TP and PCA. I know John has kind of put out a, public service announcement on that. But when you get something done at a factory and there's kind of a language barrier and you get that shipment and things aren't right, you can't ship that stuff out. And I think that speaks to the integrity of our company.
No, absolutely.
To send that out, send that back and even though if we have to wait a little longer, then it still allows us to create a premium and produce a premium product to get everybody covered. So,
if it's not right, it's not right.
Yeah.
That's where I look at it. So
I agree.
Got to have that integrity behind it. And even though if it does hit your cost a little bit, obviously makes people wait, but that's obviously what you want to do is put out something that you intend to, and not just put something out with a name on it. And then it tarnishes that blend and that brand and your brand overall, obviously.
Right. And I think when people smoke the Mil Diaz Maduro, I know we're talking about the Coroneta Maduro too, but I think when people smoke both those cigars, they'll understand why they took a little bit more time to get out to the retail stores this year. And it was hard with, I don't know if anybody else has said this or if you guys have heard it from any of the other reps or brands, but with TP being in January and PCA being in March, it put a big strain on these band factories and these box factories.
Just a whole supply chain issue.
Yeah, like the cigars are done and they're waiting, and there's only a handful of band factories and a handful of box factories, so our order for this many boxes is just under Altadis along with everybody else, so I think it was a time crunch for a lot of people, and I think it was too much for the industry. And I think it was a big wake up call for the PCA and the TP.
And I saw PCA pushed it back a handful of weeks for next year. I see that it's in mid-April this next year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So
yep.
That, I think is intentional. So
well,
more spacing.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Part 1. We'll stay live here. We're going to get into part 2 where we go beyond the BS. And Jake had some posts recently, so we're going to be talking about, if you're listening on the audio, click over to part 2. This month is a lot of different things, just like every other month. But Jake, what is this month that you had posted about? Just as an intro for the next part.
Yeah, so June is Men's Mental Health Month. So I think that's a big deal, especially in today's society and what we're dealing with as far as that goes. And we can get into that later. But I think it's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and so I think we all need to discuss men's mental health a little more than what we should, or what we have been. Sorry.
Absolutely. Yep. All right, guys. Cheers. Happy Whiskey Wednesday. We'll be chatting in the. Wow, that's aggressive.
Cheers, guys. Ding, cheers. Ding, ding. If I don't break a glass.
It's good. I don't know.
That was a good one. I heard it. It was good.
Yeah, I heard it too. So, all right, guys. We'll see you in part 2.
It's like right in your fucking ear.
Yes.
Do it in my ear next time. I'm the deaf one.
Yeah. Jake, need to take a quick break or?
No, I'm good. Sorry if I I hope you guys couldn't hear me eating on the audio. I just had to scarf down some
kept ducking
Chipotle.
down, and then you came back up chewing, so you did well.
Yeah. I was trying to mask it a little bit. I just didn't want anybody to hear like me chomping on like this like mic that's coming out of my ear.
I didn't hear it, so you're good.
Well, good. Thank God.
All right. Do we want to drink something else part 2?
I'm good with going with this.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. Make sure it's lit up though. You gotta get the light.
So we're not worried about killing the battery.
Well, it's your bottle. I mean, I don't really give a fuck. But
we can't really see it that well on the screen.
I can see it. I like it.
Have that backlight on.
I can see it. I can see it. Yeah.
Can you?
It comes out on my screen, but
all right.
Part of the augmented reality on the website.
The augmented reality. That's fucking hilarious.
On the augmented reality, you can
turn the light on.
The light on and off on the bottle. I was just messing with it.
Jesus Christ. All in. They went all in on that.
Oh, yeah.
Seth, do you want a mic out there?
I might.
Okay.
That topic.
There you go. He's going to set that up. Have it available to you there.
Yeah.
Perfect. Richie Riot was on. I saw. I don't know if he's still on. We got Sean Anderson just tuning in. Bobby Hirschman tuning in. Great to see all you guys on there. Greg Sanston has been on. I don't know if he's still on. Ray Cheshire. Yeah, so those listening live, if you're on our YouTube, we don't so in front of us, we have the Facebook comments. It doesn't combine those two things. And it does show up on the screen, but we're using a screen that's a little bit away, so we don't really monitor as much on the YouTube live comments. So if you guys can and want to chime in, I would recommend going to the Facebook feed. Definitely where we're going to get a lot more interaction, just even amongst yourselves, obviously in the audience too. So we appreciate everyone listening and chiming in. So that's fantastic. And make sure, as always, share, like, review, all that good stuff here. Let me put that banner up as we get into the next part.
Ray and Greg, Newark.
A
little farther east than that.
Yeah.
You guys ready?
Yeah, I hit it.
No, but like this. Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast, everyone. This is episode 317, and this is part 2, Beyond the BS. We're still joined by Jake Sanders.
Clink, hello.
With Crowned Heads. Jake was one of the co-founders of this podcast originally, has moved on to 2 new careers. Now you're with Crowned Heads Cigars, and you are the territory manager of what states?
I am a lot. I am Northeast, technically, is how we named it. But Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, Western PA, technically West Virginia, upstate New York, and all of New England. So got a lot of miles under my belt, but I love seeing the eastern side of the country. It's really beautiful. So it's exciting. So it's just about balancing schedule with life and getting around to everybody and servicing everybody to the best of my abilities and spreading the great word of Crowned Heads and Oz family cigars.
Yeah, sorry, I don't mean to leave, Osgener out, but
I know. I just have to say it.
No, you should. Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely should as well start introducing it as such. So
it was very difficult for us to even figure it out. So you're fine.
I got you. We're going to try to get Tim on here in the upcoming weeks. We've got Jake and Tim Osgener coming out to Tinder Box at Easton, one of our sponsors, where this podcast is based out of in Columbus, Ohio. Late July, have him out for a very cool event. Definitely a learning event. A lot of knowledge coming to kind of come through, not only through Tim and Jake, but also through the tobacco you guys are going to be trying and some of the blends as well. So great event. We're going to be getting that information out. In the meantime, just not to get in between that, but literally in between that here at the end of June, hopefully early next week, Tinderbox will be releasing information on a forged cigar event as well in Columbus, Ohio. So we're going to be doing something a little different there. I kind of mentioned it, I think, 2 weeks ago. But you guys are doing a tasting with you guys call them Fumas or you call them Puritos? What do you call those?
We call them Puritos.
Puritos. So
yeah,
we're going to do the Puritos with you guys. We're actually going to be doing a full-blown blind taste testing with Forged Cigars. So, guys, if you guys are local, stay tuned. It'll be something that we haven't done really, and I know it's not a real common event, but you will be sampling, if you will, full-blown cigars. And they're going to be no bands on them. It's cigar 1, cigar 2, maybe a cigar 3. And you will be rating them, and we're going to learn on what you guys like, don't like. But when you aren't smoking the brand or the band on there, you guys are smoking the tobacco, and it's going to be an interesting event, I think, for the people that partake in that and participate in seeing what they might even surprise themselves with when they find out which cigar they like the most and what the brand behind it is, because Forged has a vast portfolio of different brands, and I'm interested to see what some of the participants will get out of that. So whatever your cigar that you like the most, that's going to be the one that you're going to get as well. So you're going to get 2, maybe 3 cigars. Yeah, it's going to be fun.
I got invited to a local cigar shop years ago to do a blind tasting of 3 cigars, and the only thing I remember is I was looking at 2 of the 3. I was like, these 2 look like they're made by the same manufacturer, and they were.
Well, we'll see what happens there. But back to Oscar Family Cigars. Obviously, we're going to have Tim and Jake out there in July, so it'll be a little while, but we're going to have fun that night as well. So tonight for the topic, we do a little different thing. Sometimes it's audience interaction. We're going to get, we did some fun things last podcast with Jonathan, and then also Jared.
Yeah,
Jared.
He was at Jared's house,
right?
And then Jared joined us for part 2.
Yeah, so that was going to be. We just did basically kind of a rapid fire of just questions.
Yeah, you had a website where you're just like, all right, pick a number. Here you go.
That was the what we commented on. We've done it where we have audience feedback as well, and we go over topics that you guys want to talk about or questions you have. So tonight, we kind of mentioned in the end of part 1 here, but Jake, I titled the topic, let's check in on each other and kind of explain where that came from, if you don't mind. Why? Because I always look at your posts and your Instagram stories and everything. I mean, you're very, very active on there with Crowned Heads and otherwise. So, and you send me a lot of reels. So
I know I feel like I gotta watch myself sometimes, but it's
on the reels. Private messages, you don't have to, but on your own, maybe. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, there's always like a way to offend somebody these days, but it's, I feel like everybody should have a voice. And like, as soon as we stop talking about, certain issues, I think that's when things get really bad. So, and that's kind of a new mindset that I've kind of cultivated too, like we should all be able to talk about certain things and talk about hard times and kind of discuss these things, and that way we can kind of figure out different solutions and maybe even get a new understanding for what we don't really understand. So and that sounds very like left, very progressive, but I feel like that's just a human instinct that we should abide by, regardless of what political side you're on or whatever you believe in. So
I think checking on each other or, having deep conversations, I would not say that's a left or right or anywhere in between. I wouldn't even say it's a political thing. I think that's definitely going to be more just everyday life. I think that's just something it's something that's in everyone.
That most people don't do. It's like Americans, like, instead of saying hi, it's, hey, how are you? And we kind of just say it.
Yeah, sure.
But as soon as actually somebody wants to like actually talk to you about it, when you ask them, we're all kind of, very hands off, and it's like, yeah, I just was saying hi, I didn't really mean I wanted to talk to you, but it's very important that
next time just say fine.
Yeah, exactly.
You said June is, again, like I said, we all know June is Pride Month, right? I mean, that's something that is definitely more in the media. And not to get in the political side of things, rightfully so. I think this is something that, whatever your belief on that is, I think there's a reason it wasn't that long ago that obviously that was a big thing that people had to keep private for their career, for their personal lives and all that stuff. So I can appreciate the purpose of Pride Month.
Yeah.
You're talking June is men's
mental health awareness month.
Right. So why do you think, right off the rip, anyone out there in the audience, and obviously Jake, you're bringing this up here, but people see that and it's almost as though, do you think what do you think the reaction is when you post that, right? Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. What do you think the reaction is, or what is your reaction to that when you see that in America today?
I mean, it really speaks to the volume that, testosterone and kind of not really the actual concept of feminism, but the idea and the ideology behind feminism and what like some people think it stands for rather than equality. I think it really speaks to the volume of how we've kind of suppressed the male instinct, the kind of, for me, to be completely honest, I think it just speaks to the fact that a lot of men deal with low testosterone levels. I think that men deal with a lot of issues in this world, and there's a lot of burdens put on men, and then we're not allowed to say what our feelings are. Nobody really wants to hear what a man thinks, because especially if you're a white male, because of what the narrative has been pushed for the last decade or 2 decades. So I think it's important to show that we're in this world and that young men are being taught more by mothers rather than full families in certain regards, meaning father and mother, and it leads us to this low testosterone, low driven mindset because of it, because we don't know what we're supposed to say, we don't know what we're supposed to feel, because we've been told that we're bad and we're privileged, and we have to abide by everybody else's narratives.
Keep an eye on the comments while we're talking too. I'm gonna try to.
So, and I don't mean to make it sound that the way it is, but I don't know how else to say it. I mean, I know that I've struggled with drive in the last 10 years due to other issues. If I may, I know Steve, you've done different testosterone therapies because of other things. So
100%.
I think all of this is very, very important. And without strong men in the world, and courageous men in the world, then it just doesn't balance out, and we don't thrive well. So if that makes sense.
No, it does. I think you hit on a couple things there, and Nate, chime in wherever you'd like, please. I think you hit on a couple things there. One being, historically, and let's not go back too far here, and again, you're talking to on the screen here. Obviously, there's 3
white dudes grew up in the Midwest.
So perspective, right? We'll give that a disclaimer. No one's an expert here. We talk about that all the time on the shows, that this is just us open discussion here. But I would say you do see a lot of that. More often than not, just in the U.S., I can't speak to other countries. There are a lot of children that are raised by single mothers.
Yes.
There are a lot of children that, going back to, I'd say in the 1900s, just through the generation there, 20s, 30s, 40s, you have the World War and II, and all of these generations where the men were the providers, if you will, based on the way the country had evolved and just society had evolved. So you had the providers, as to your point, and that's what I was hearing you say, is that in the kind of the classic nuclear family, if you will, as they used to call it, it was the male was out working and the mother was more or less the one staying home taking care of the children. Little boys and little girls, obviously, but we've got some echo there.
Sorry.
No, we're good.
You got it.
No, we're
Sorry.
good. But I think that does bring up something to your point where it's like you have, when we're talking about men's health, being raised in the sense of the mother is the one that is doing much of the nurturing and the socialization of the children as they are growing up, right? That's more of a classic thing, at least in America, throughout those years. While you looked at the father as the breadwinner, and you have the stereotypes, in this country a lot of times is that they aren't emotional because they were raised in a certain way. At least I'm speaking for my family as well.
Yeah.
But you had that kind of connection. So you, as a young man, you're kind of trying to, in a sense, be more like the father figure if it was available, and if it was absent, that's a whole nother conversation, while being raised mainly by the mother.
Right.
So it was, and depending on how that dynamic was, it's kind of a contradiction, if you will, I think a lot of times,
Major
because then you have a contradiction in the way that you're raised by the mother, but you're trying to be more of the stereotypical male provider. So I think there's a huge and kind of fundamental problem there.
Oh,
right.
For sure. Yeah.
And I think
agree.
that goes back to tribal times and everything else, right? Until the son can go out and be the hunter versus the gatherer, that whole thing right there. And but it's interesting to see what I feel like we've missed. And in today's society, we have this great opportunity for more of because of a lot of that, more of a partnership in relationships where you have an understanding of, in a sense, possibly both sides, where it does kind of get back towards a little bit more of a middle ground.
Right.
A lot of times if you're in a relationship and the male, or you say, would you say, is it men's health, right? Is how you said that?
Yeah, it's
So
men's
health.
mental health.
I'm not even going to go
awareness.
down, like the reason I'm saying that, I'm not even going to go down the road of, and I preface this by like,
A PC,
Pride Month,
like,
which turned in everything. I'm not going to go down unless you guys, I don't think we should go down the whole gender differences. And
No,
stuff
we're
like
here
that.
to talk about
I'm
men's mental health and catching
So,
up. I mean, that's
I
the
think
point.
that there's this great opportunity that's missed a lot of times where it's like you can have a little bit of the historical differences where the men can be a little bit more men and women can be a little bit more women, but these aren't two one size fits all categories, right?
No,
so I think there's a lot of this opportunity where you can have this partnership, because it's like, I would say most men are absolutely lying if they don't think that they can relate to women. I think it's just it's like a forced thing at this point. We not saying you always understand women, and women don't always, they understand men more than the opposite. But I think that there's something there that it's almost like that because of that contradiction, Jake. I think that there's something there that men can create when it comes to this part of the conversation. They can create a bigger divide because they literally will just not communicate, or they surround themselves by people, men and women, that don't have an open dialogue. You don't have an open conversation about stuff because
completely.
The stereotype is that the man just kind of doesn't talk about their feelings. But I can say a lot of times that's on both sides of the coin, right? There's plenty of men, I think, that try to communicate as well, and then it doesn't matter if you're the men or the women. Communication sometimes, especially when there's emotion involved, it's very difficult sometimes. We've talked about that on the show before, where it's like you don't necessarily want to communicate because it shows maybe a sign of weakness if you're struggling. But at the same time, you don't want to bring up something and then it could be reinforced because the other person is seeing that in you, and that makes you go further down, or you might upset the other party. And then now all of a sudden you were worried about that, and you've done it now, and now all of a sudden it's getting worse. Where in fact, I think a lot of times if you do have that, you do disclose how you're feeling. If you're struggling, like men's mental health, as you're talking about it, is that you can start to work towards a healthier kind of mental health type of thing on the men's side.
For sure. Yeah.
What do you think, Nate?
Well, I think because the vast differences between men and women, like if women have an issue, they need other women to talk to. If men have an issue, they need other men to be able to talk to, because the other sides don't necessarily see things the same way or understand each other the same way. We need, guys need to have those guy friends to be able to go to and be able to talk about what's going on, because not every woman in their life may understand exactly what they're going through or what they're feeling.
Correct.
Or, on the women's side, what is important to women, or what makes them angry, or what makes them loving, may not be the same thing that men understand. So they can sit there and try to explain that to their partner, and they may not get it because we're different.
Right.
But I think those differences, when they come together, helps. It's almost contradictory. Like if a woman's by herself, she needs other women to be able to talk to. If a man's by himself, he needs other men to talk to. If they're together in a partnership, they should, in theory, be able to talk to each other, because they're partners, because they're both trying to work towards the same goal.
Amen.
It doesn't always happen.
No.
But that should be the case. But
that's why 75% of marriages end in divorce, right? Like,
not that. No, it's a little less than 50.
Oh, okay.
I agree with what you're saying. I think it depends on the topic at hand. I think so. Yes, first step of it all, I think, is communicating. It's not just, and that doesn't, men's mental health, women's mental health, just mental health in general. If you just bury it down, that's obviously not going to help anything, right? And there's plenty of opportunity to even reach out, even to therapy or someone that is not around you, because sometimes you'll find yourself in an echo chamber if you're just talking about guy things to other guys. Depends on their situation, right? So it's you have to figure out, it's not based on man or woman, it's who you need to communicate to based on what you're dealing with.
It's all of us. It's not just Absolutely. Men too. Like it's like everything's fucked up. I mean, it's just like, and I don't like to be cynical like that. I feel like I'm more like a pragmatist, and I feel like, all three of us are really at the end of the day. But I mean, it's everybody's told the narrative on one side, and everybody's told the narrative on the other side. And then it's like, and you can intertwine that or interpret that any way the listeners and the viewers want to. But the problem at the end of the day is that there's somehow this issue of that everybody, not everybody, but the narrative of this victimizing of everybody, but somehow the real problems aren't being addressed as far as how people are feeling and how they're dealing with those issues of whether how they were brought up or what they've consumed in their life or what's going on in their life and today and what they're doing to resolve those issues. I don't know how we've arrived at this point where we want to all be, I believe that 90% of us are good people, and we all want to have humility and respect for the rest of the population that's around us, right? And the people that we coincide with. But then we're missing this portion of the fact that everybody's telling everybody everything, but then everybody's telling everybody the real stuff, not the real stuff. Yeah. Like, here's some of the statistics, if that makes sense. Like, it's like, men are 4 times more likely to commit suicide, making up nearly 80% of all suicides in America. And then 40% of men have never spoken to anyone about their mental health. And then 1 in 10 men experience depression or anxiety. Less than half receive treatment. And I think that derives from the old ideology of, men being strong and not crying and not talking to people about their feelings and stuff like that. But I think it's a lot more than that, because we're being pushed to be less masculine. I think that we're pushed to be we hear this term of toxic masculinity, and it's like, what the fuck does that even mean? It's like there's people that are horrible that are women. There's people that are horrible that are men. It's not, it's just toxic, right? It should just be a toxic trait for a human being. It shouldn't be toxic masculinity, or, you never hear the term toxic feminine, whatever that anemone, or whatever word you want to come up with.
Right.
But I think that's what we're really talking about as far as, men's mental health awareness and just everybody in general's mental health.
Yeah, I think so. You said a lot there where the toxic, whatever. I agree. I actually agree with a lot of what you said with the toxic part of there, is that just people can be toxic. So anytime I feel as though you are shoving it down other people's throats, or you are saying my way or the highway, that's the toxic side of it, right?
Yeah.
And these terms like toxic masculinity, even the term feminism, they have started somewhere, and then they've been kind of, in my opinion, bastardized by people taking it too far.
Correct.
Or they take the term and they start using that as a kind of a hot button, right?
Correct. And let's not forget
all
that
the time. It happens all the time. It was something where it's obviously certain things here.
Another spammer.
I'm not going to deal with it. Yeah. Marilyn, go fuck yourself. That is nothing about toxic masculinity. That is a spammer on the feed. So please.
I love that. I absolutely love that.
Pick somewhere else to go here.
Do you guys want to buy bottles online? Do you want more bourbon online?
So, but Jake, I guess, those terms have, I think, come out. It's interesting. It's interesting. You said something and kind of help me out here, because I was listening to what you're saying. And now,
yeah, sorry, I say a lot of that.
No, it's fine. Where you were saying that, the men are supposed to be strong and not cry and do all that stuff. And then you took it to another place. I'm trying to remember how you said it there, where it was, but then men aren't allowed to be men. You kind of said two sides of that coin.
Correct. And I know I'm contradicting myself.
No. I'm just, I'm not, I don't think you mean to. I'm just trying to listen to, what is it? I guess the thing is what are men supposed to be?
What I'm saying.
I'll preface that with, there is, again, no one size fits all based on man or woman, and that's the biggest part of this whole conversation.
Correct.
But when you said that,
I think what's happening is, and what has happened is that there's this ideology of not showing your feelings.
Mm-hmm.
But however, the fact is that when you do show your feelings respectfully and you talk about your problems and you own up to your shit, you're more of a man than any, because of that reason. You're being real, you're being honest, you have honorable traits of integrity and loyalty because of those things, and I think that's what we're missing in this conversation, in this society, because it's kind of a goofy quote, and it may sound gimmicky, but it's like, I saw something a long time ago and it totally made sense to me, is nobody asks a lion how they're doing. And I think
they can't talk, Jake.
Well, I get that. I knew you were going to say that shit. But what I'm saying is, it's like your topic. It's laid out perfectly for this conversation, where it's, let's check in on each other. And I think that's something that men, we don't do that. At least not the majority of us. And I really think, to answer the problem and answer the question, going back to what Nate said, men need other men to discuss certain things with them. Men need a person to look up to, and they need a mentor, and they need a mentee, if that makes sense. That's how you grow as a man, in my opinion, because you're going to learn things from that mentor, but we need to feel fulfilled. So we need that mentee too. And that's how the generations get passed down.
I think that's a structure there that is pretty universal, right? That's business, that's That's life. You know what I mean? There's stages in life of based on your experiences that you should look up to someone, and then obviously at some point, hopefully, someone's looking up to you because of your experience and what you've
It's
learned.
classic fatherhood, right? Which is, if you go back to like what Brandon Karsh used to say, like the monkey brain, like it's our genetics of, and I'm not a father, so
Oh, wait, hang on. Wait. We see you.
Boom.
We hear you.
Oh.
Go ahead. We can hear you. But
Yeah. But
got a great look on your face, on your frozen.
Yeah, I know. I was like that. But like it goes back to the monkey brain and that way of our genetics where we have to have somebody to look up to so we learn and we have to pass it down. I mean, it's basic, but somehow we've gotten completely off the fucking rail and tried to incorporate every little minute and acute feeling of every single individual person. And I just don't think that humans are made that way, you know?
Explain that last comment, please.
So what I mean is like, we're in this social structure of trying to accommodate everybody and their feelings because we're so involved and we're so connected to a lot of people, right? But the idea of our genetics was to be in a smaller confined community, and then a smaller community being our family, to have a mentor and then us and then a mentee. So if we're trying generation, and if we're trying to incorporate the world, which we shouldn't do because it's just too much. That's my point. You can't make everybody happy, even if you try to respect everybody, but you also have to lay your feelings out on the table too. You know, that's why this conversation is so important and what we're having tonight. And that's why these podcasts are so important.
No, I appreciate that.
Does that make sense? I mean, it's, I don't know. I know I said a lot. It's just like the older that I'm getting in our conversations that we've had, it seems like we try to incorporate a very broad structure instead of focusing on you and I's problems and how we get better so that we get better. And then we can worry about everybody else. We have to fix us first.
So I think you bring up a good point. I think that also it could be a little bit short-sighted in this fact that, like, yes, ideally to certain standards, that's the way it should work. But then obviously life always gets in the way. And you know,
I get that. Yeah.
You're supposed to look up to your father. Well, if that father either passed away or, you know, is not there, your mother, same thing, passed away, not there. You don't have necessarily your mentor is someone that is, unfortunately, you're young enough or you're impressionable enough that your mentor that you look up to is not necessarily, from a society standpoint, a good example. And so obviously generations breed the previous or the next generation. And unfortunately, that's where there are even more issues. There's also something that there's no right way to do this. There's no right way to be a man. There's no right way to be a woman. But I think that's part of where you really want to try to surround yourself with people that you truly look up to, not based on necessity, but based on what you think morally is right.
Correct.
And that's not always easy. I mean, we're talking like just in general.
Very difficult.
You know, I mean, based on your upbringing, where you were born, you know, what family you were born into. You know, that's something that one of my professors back in college, you know, said at one point. I've said it on the podcast before. We're sitting around, went to Miami University here in Ohio, predominantly at the time, I'm sure now, white middle class to upper class type of students. And, you know, my professor looks around and he says, I just want to give you guys a quick round of applause, give you guys yourself a round of applause. You guys, majority of you, picked very good parents.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously that's an ironic statement because it's like, we don't pick. I mean, he literally followed it up with saying, you guys could have done something extremely stupid and picked to be born in a third world country where, you know, the average lifespan is, you know, we won't make past 2 years old. And so, I
Right.
mean, there are obviously those factors there, and I don't want to dive down that too far, but I mean, I think there's a part of that there where you do, you know, the where we're at right now, and what you're kind of really bringing up with the men's mental health is just more of a little bit of a treetop thing. I think the stereotypes. I mean, you talk about like not talking about stuff, you know, as a man. It's like, yeah, there's that other stereotype where, you know, you brought it up earlier about me and yeah, testosterone and stuff. The big stereotype is my dad was the same way. It's like he didn't go to a doctor on a regular basis until he started having health problems.
Right.
You're talking like legit health problems. You know, it's not like when was the last time, Jake, I'll ask you, and not to put you on the spot, and I don't know the answer to this, but when was the last time you went in for just a physical checkup?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. You're supposed to go at least once a year.
Yeah.
And honestly, as you get older, I'd recommend, you know, every 6 months.
Right.
I mean, and that is something that, not to get political, but I'm pretty sure most healthcare plans with the Affordable Health Care Act, that is included in all of the plans as preventative care, just to go in every 6 months. And that is no cost to you. Now, do most women do it? I don't think so. Most men do it? Certainly not. So if you haven't seen a doctor in 2 years, you don't know what's going on.
Right.
So that's not just you. I mean, this is in general, right? I mean, I know that, you know, my dad didn't even take his car in for oil changes on a regular basis. You know what I mean? Let alone go to a doctor to check himself out. So that's when a car starts having problems where you don't do the preventative maintenance, right? So we're the same way, where you have this opportunity. We're in this great first world country here with all of the opportunities. Not going to get into the healthcare system at all, but I mean, you have these opportunities at least to go in and get a basic checkup.
Right. Right.
And I don't know the statistics, but I would say there's a great percentage of people that do not do that, because inherently we say that it's because men don't want to, you know, admit that something's wrong, or they're fine, they're strong, and all that stuff. They don't want to hear that something's wrong. That's, I think, a human nature thing.
Well, that's another thing.
You don't go to a doctor because if you go in and all of a sudden it's like, hey, we found something. But the best thing you can hear is, hey, we found something, but luckily we caught it early on.
Right.
That's something that is so ironic to me, is that you have people, men especially, that they won't go because they don't want to hear that something's wrong. But by the time they are like fucking can't get up out of bed because something inside of them is like basically about to burst, or you're in so much pain, but you're like, I'm a man. I mean, I can get through it. I can do this. And it's all, and then you finally go in. It's like, if we would have caught this sooner, we might've been able to do something about it. But now you know, we're going to have to remove something, or you are going to die.
It's a running joke of like when the farmer finally goes in, like checks himself into the hospital, like something seriously wrong. Because the farmer's, you know, just on the, like, he's going to take care of, like, I'm fine. No, it's not that bad. I'll heal. I'll get over it. Like, it's kind of a, almost like a sad running joke in that particular style of community. Like, something seriously wrong. If the farmer's the one going to the doctor and not someone bringing him to the doctor.
And Ray,
but it relates to, you know, like you bring up the car analogy, like people sit there and they have a noise with the car. It's like, I don't want to take my car into the mechanic because
turn up the radio, you're fine.
Because I know, because if my car is making a noise, that means it's going to cost a bunch of money. I don't have the money, or I don't want to deal with the inconvenience of not having my car. And when it, you know, all of a sudden more and more problems start coming off of that, you're like, well, shit, if I had just taken care of the belt when it first had a problem, I wouldn't be having to put $2,000 in my motor.
Right.
I should have handled that $200 part.
Well, and first of all, I want to comment. Ray Chester says, what great first world country, USA. So flat out. Sean, sometimes, you know, Steve, sometimes with everything that is going on, it's better to be blissfully unaware of things you don't know about. I would say certain things, yes, but when we're talking about what we're talking about tonight, absolutely wrong. That is absolutely incorrect, because ignorance is not bliss when things are a problem, when you are experiencing a problem. I would absolutely agree with that. Now, to other people, that's the burden that I think a lot of men put on themselves, is that you don't want to put that burden on your loved ones. So if you go to the doctor, you find out something's wrong, or if you're struggling with mental health, something's wrong, you feel like you don't want to put a burden on your spouse or your
That's
family or your
huge.
friends.
That's so big.
Or everything.
That's so
But
big.
that's why I said
And sorry
earlier,
about if you guys can hear this. We're having a nice quick downpour here.
but that's
Yeah,
why I was saying earlier, like men need each other to be able to go to be able to talk to be able to hang out with.
It helps, but men at least need. But the problem is if you've got issues going on and you surround yourself with other men that are like, suck it up, be a man.
Those are people,
that's not going to be your sounding board there.
Yeah, those aren't the people you need.
Right, but that's not what we're talking about. I think we're talking about like a lot of different things, and I understand what you're saying, Steve, about how like what I was saying was kind of like surface level, like the top of the tree thing. But I think like we're not here tonight discussing like kids in Uganda or over in Gaza. You know, we're talking about like men, like we do live in a first world country, and we do have these issues still. So like, you know, you would think that with a high running society that you wouldn't have these issues. So the question is why do we? And that's what we're discussing tonight. So it's not about the outliers. I think what we're talking mostly is about like where the men in most first worlds, I mean, let's just be honest, are dealing with those mental issues with high capacity and high earning salaries and stuff like that. You know, why are we still having these issues? And I think it derives back from what we're talking about as far as not feeling like it's okay to deal with that problem or have that burden. It's okay for men to have that burden on us because that makes us stronger. When in actual reality, it makes us stronger to deal with our problems, right?
Absolutely.
So how do we do that?
The response of, again, suck it up, whatever, is not the accurate response. I think the first thing, and not to shut down the conversation, but it is fucking everyone has problems. Right. That's the big thing. You hear that comment a lot of times, like, well, like someone's like, hey, how you doing? Right. It happens in the cigar shop all the time. I can complain, but no one wants to hear it. And it's like, well, I mean, a random customer doesn't want to hear it, most likely, but there are people in your life, hopefully, that do want to hear what's going on. So I guess my question to you is that the fact that everyone has problems, men, women, and everything like that. So what does it look like when like this men's mental health awareness month? Like, what is the goal here? What do you like? I appreciate that because it is something, and I agree with the stereotypes of, men don't really talk about it. They don't get checked up. But I can bring up the fact that, people don't go to the doctor at all. You brought up the fact earlier that, it's like when I got to about 30 years old, I realized that I had gone through a lot of changes in my 20s. I was married. I was having marital problems. I was not happy with my job. I was tired. I was gaining weight, all of these things. And it was a lot of it lifestyle, right? I mean, I was not eating healthy. I was not exercising as I always was. I was eating like I was, 18 years old still. And it's just something that I found that I started going to the doctor for, my general practitioner. And Jake, I've told you, Nate knows this. And it's like one of those things that I at least took the step. Now, I'll say this is that when I think I was 28 years old, I went in and I started talking because I had some friends. I had a good friend, Rob, who went through testicular cancer, and he was talking to me about some of the things that he had gone through medically and seeking out professional help. Because of that, he had low testosterone. Now, I've talked to a lot of people since that they're like, oh, maybe I should get, on testosterone. I was like, well, you got to check yourself out first. 28 years old, I went to the doctor. I was bringing all this stuff. I did what we're talking about, and I did not follow through, did not get blood tests or anything like that. Come 30 years old, now I'm going through a divorce, and I realized that a lot of those situations that you were talking about, like not having the energy, not having the drive, it wasn't necessarily like at the time. Now we're going back over 10, almost 15 years ago, where you don't see commercials for TRT. You don't see all the shit on social media. Didn't exist, right? So it's like, it was still that machismo thing where it's like, no, I'm young enough. And even like my doctor was like, you're healthy. You know what I mean? Yeah, you put on some weight, but like you're still healthy, you're active and all that stuff. almost I did talk myself out of following through with it. Now at 30 some years old, I went through it. Sure as shit, I was at a very low range of normal for testosterone at 30, maybe 31 years old. And that's when I started doing androgel. I started doing I became very quickly aware of not relying necessarily on pharmaceuticals, but it was like, there's something going on here that is affecting. And a lot of it, I think, is lifestyle that was contributing to that. And there are things that even when I saw the doctor I go to now, he had even said, I wish you would have come to me at that age, because I feel fairly confident we could have possibly helped this out through lifestyle and diet changes, and we could have gotten you back on track. Well, at that point, I was already doing testosterone shots.
Right.
And at that point, it's kind of like, yeah, we can go backwards and then back up. But he's like, as long as you're feeling good and you're following this protocol, you're not abusing it. Like, there's a lot of science behind this at this point, and this is what I recommend continuing going down that path. And now I see him literally every 6 months, and that's where I can talk about this. What's that?
But you took that step.
Well, and I'm using myself as an example that I said no to it because I didn't want to hear. Like, I kind of knew, I kind of thought, and what happened is that I pushed it off long enough, even at a younger age, that I didn't address the issue. And as soon as I did, life, not saying just was all of a sudden like sunshine and rainbows, but I mean, ups and downs through life. But I feel as though I was a bit better as I paid more attention to my personal health.
Right.
It was a long road, but I did get now, like even today, where it's like I feel definitely better even at 43 years old than I did at 29 years old.
Well, and that's a classic example
not just
too.
Like everyone says, it's not just the fact, oh, he's on testosterone. That is not, I mean, it has something to do with it. But that's, I mean, I get blood tests all the time.
Yeah.
On like the full panel, because there's other issues going on. My doctor, there's different things that we pay a little bit more attention to, or it's like, hey, take another blood test in a few weeks. Don't do this. Don't eat that. Don't drink, for several days before a blood test, because of certain like liver enzymes and stuff like that will flare up and stuff like that. Yep. And it's like, it's being aware of that part of it as a core, that you take care of yourself. Taking care of yourself as a man is not burying things down and not addressing issues.
Correct.
It's confronting things head on. That's why I look at the male, or if you want to go the alpha male, it is absolutely addressing things head on, because you then can actually make progress.
Correct. And that's that's what women are attracted to. That's what people are attracted to as a masculine man. I mean, that's not like, but yet, I mean, what percentage of our population is morbidly obese? I mean, and it's because of lifestyle changes that have not been addressed. And I mean, I mean, let's take it back to the history a little bit, in my opinion, and if people disagree with this, fine, but take it back to 1800s, 1900s, where I have this theory of the fact that nowadays, we start life a lot later, meaning we start the real world life a lot later because of the school system and education. In the early days, it was get to work and you do your thing and you create a problem solving mentality. And we went from this and created a beautiful country, the Industrial Revolution, and build up all this infrastructure and money and all this stuff. And then you come to more education, right? And then by the time you get out of school with high school diplomas and college diplomas, and then associates, 4-year degrees, masters, doctorates, whatever, those problem solving skills aren't the same as if you were when your dad told you to go work at a grocery store at 14 years old, because you're not dealing with people. So then when you meet a crossroads, which all men do, and I think this is kind of my theory because I've watched my dad as I grew up. I've watched the men in my family, and I've watched and observed a lot of different just people in general that deal with this crossroads in their 20s now, because that's where the real problem lies, because you're not in school anymore. You're stuck in the real world. You're trying to do what society tells you to do and stuff like that. And this isn't a victim mentality. I don't have a victim mentality, but this is just facts. So you get to this point in your 20s where you meet this crossroads, and we don't have the same mindset and the same values and structure in our heads to problem solve that we would if we would have started the real world life at a lot younger age. So you get to your 20s and you get to this crossroads, and for Steve's example, for my example, for my dad's example, you get to this crossroads of, you get into a marriage that ends bad. You don't know what to do with your life. You get depressed. You don't talk to anybody about it. You eat a lot. You get fat. You don't take care of yourself. And then you wake up one day when you're 30 years old and realize that you're 70 pounds overweight, and you've completely given up on the ambitions that you had when you were 18 years old, and realize you got to make up all that ground. When back in the day, that would have happened when you were 16 years old. You know what I mean? So now we're starting life, at least my generation is starting life, I believe, at a later state. And so we're developed, and we get to this point of, we don't know what the fuck to do, because we've never met a boss that has completely fucked us over. We've never fell in love with a woman and bought a house and gotten married, and then that ends in shambles. And we're met in this crossroads of, what do we do now? And we have to pick ourselves up. However, if you don't have that mentor, you have to go seek that out and figure it out. And then most of us don't even find that mentor, and we got to pull ourselves out of the pit anyways. And then that's, I believe, really truly gives us the power to do what we want, and be masculine men, is going through those trials and getting ourselves out of it, and having that mentor, or if not, making that decision to better ourselves because of our family, because of ourselves, because of what we're supposed to do in this world, and finding that fulfillment. Does that make all? I mean,
are you saying we don't, like, your generation or people in general don't fail early enough to learn from this?
Correct.
So what do you mean? Is it because of society coddling?
I think we grow up too late.
That's what I'm saying. Yes. The answer is yes. Across that. Yes.
Well, I mean,
I think that's what he's trying to say, is we grow up too late.
So what's the solution then?
I think it's parents, and I think it's mentors like you know, finding that mentee, and talking to people, and getting this awareness of the fact that we've gone through these experiences. Like, why do you think that it's so, why do you think that it was so great for me at 22 years old to sit at the Tinder Box and listen to all the stories and the experience in the back room? Because if you observe and you shut your fucking mouth for a second, you can live 6 or 7 different lives and make your own opinion and make your own decision on how you should live your life.
Well, I would agree with that part of it. I think that, not,
and hopefully better yourself.
So I think that, there has been a time, you talk about, like, you're in your 20s, you can't buy a house and get married and all this stuff. You can't go through you can't get fired from a job, or you can't go through a divorce. Like, those aren't necessarily good things.
I'm not saying you have to go through those exact things. I'm just saying the trials.
The issue was, I think, even before you, like when I bought a house, you know, in my 20s, it was subprime days, mid 2000s, right? So it was 2004 subprime, and then 4 or 5 years later, it was foreclosure alley everywhere around me. They were giving away like no money down on a house, which sounds great to like you're talking about. I think your generation right now, that sounds amazing. But you look at the generations before, like my parents and a lot of people that were born in like the 40s, like they had to save, like we talk about high interest rates now. Look back, like they're like, oh my, I had to put down 20%, and the interest rate was like 16.
Right, but things
it's like,
cost
no, but like
less.
Yeah, of course it did, but they made less. My point is that you
but the ratio is different nowadays. It can't be argued.
They were also living in a shitty apartment. That for after they went to college, but they were living in a small apartment, and they saved money and they were able to do that stuff. The generations now, they want to either graduate high school or college and buy a fucking $500,000 house because that's what they grew up in. It's like most of their parents may have, I don't want to say failed, but they didn't say, oh, when I was your age, I lived in an apartment in not a great part of town. It was a 1-bedroom. We lived on top of each other, and we did that for like 6-7 years so we could save up for a house.
But people still do that, Steve, and the rent is 20 times as much as what.
No, I would agree with that. And I feel like we're going on, like, yes, that will create some men's mental health issues, but I think
it's all a cause and effect. That's why it's not just one specific thing. I mean, I know we're not trying to solve world problems tonight, but I'm just saying, like,
I think part of a men's,
if you look at it factually and you analyze the history of what has happened just in history, not even it will lead you down a path of understanding how just people in general have got more or less will, less ambition, and are more morbidly obese due to the structure and the mental capacity of problem solving.
I would agree that America has, in the world in general, has sabotaged generations based on the way it's gone. Absolutely.
The convenience.
Correct. But again, the topic tonight is more the men's mental health side of it. So
I know, but all that leads to that. All that leads to mental health.
I think, yes, but I think there was a time in history where, yes, you looked at, say, like Hollywood, or you looked at the $1 million homes and stuff like that. Well, those homes now are obviously way more than that, just like everything else. There is less, not necessarily drive, but there's like this bitterness in people that they think they deserve more. And I think that I
understand the entitlement argument.
It's not necessarily entitlement. It's not necessarily entitlement. It's and maybe there is something with the mental health side of it, but people won't allow themselves a lot of times to be happy. Not this entrepreneurship that got out of hand mentality, not this everything else. It's the classic keeping up with the Joneses type stuff. And now keeping the Joneses is not your neighborhood. It's opening up Instagram.
I get that completely.
It's all that stuff. We overcorrected to a point with, like, I think, body image is one thing. You're talking about obesity. There's that part where it's like, yes, like, it's like, I don't necessarily, and maybe that's my generation, where it's like, I don't want to watch a movie with people that aren't attractive, that aren't very like good actors. Like I want, like, there's a new George Clooney and Brad Pitt movie coming out, and they're in their like 60s right now. Like, I'm excited to see that because they're fucking Hollywood actors. You know what I mean? I don't want to watch a Netflix show with people that are like subpar actors that look like they live in my neighborhood. That's just not my entertainment. Like, I'm sorry. Like it's not
entertainment supposed to be good.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just, yes, I want to see that stuff, but it's not necessarily like I can use it as drive for myself and all that stuff. But when it leads to this, as we call it, like clinical depression, where people they just like, man, wouldn't it be nice? It's like, yes, life's not fair. You're right. You don't have a job where you're making $500,000 a year. Well, the steps that led up to that you picked the wrong profession.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's again, like people can be depressed and we can battle it through the social and economical ways of like raising wages, but then everyone's pissed about prices going up.
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying
well,
no.
That's the housing market and everything else. I mean, it's just
I'm not saying
there's
any
a
of
lot of
that.
that stuff in there, but it's the when you talk about the mental health thing for men, it's like we're kind of, I think, on both sides of that is that, Nate, you bring up your dad a lot, working the 30 years in a job. You try to tell someone that's in their 20s right now that it's like in certain parts of the country, it's still very admirable, but it's like now the other side of it is like you work 2 years, then you find another job, another 2 years, you find another job. You'll climb the ladder that way, and then you're going to make a lot of money and stuff. Like no one's guaranteeing that shit. You know what I mean?
Correct. But I will say the problem is that the middle class is not the middle class anymore. So when you're talking about the majority, that's what we're talking about. We're not talking.
So how does that apply to men's mental health?
It applies because if we go back to the mortgage thing, it doesn't equate. I'm not saying the how to resolve this is to raise minimum wage. I don't agree with that.
No, I'm not saying
the fucking Fed could drop interest rates down tomorrow and it wouldn't fucking hurt anybody, right? That's the point I'm making.
I can't speak on that. I'm not an expert on the
well, I'm not either, but I definitely could tell you enough that wouldn't fucking hurt the country. What I'm saying is that it's
what does it have to do with
the ratio, because the fact that all of this is encompassing. You're the one that always talks about,
sure,
it's all encompassing, the full picture. This is the full picture. It's talking about the history of the Industrial Revolution and where we started, and even before that, and how we've realized, what I realize is that we go through these generations, and it's not necessarily coddling, but it's convenience. We're starting life a lot later than what we did before. The trials and tribulations are not happening at a young age. We're allowed to sit in a room and play video games for 5 hours or more and make money at it, and that's comfortable. Sure. But people can't afford what an average home costs, which is $400,000. People can't afford that. So the years of working in a factory for 30 years and having a pension and then also having a 401k are over. It doesn't, unless those companies pay to have not a raised astronomical amount of minimum wage, but there's got to be some type of societal stand when it comes to our government to say, we have to reestablish this middle class and get the majority of Americans back on track.
So, all right. You didn't really handle the mental health for men thing, in my opinion.
It's okay.
Well, but I think what he's trying to get at is because
these are the causes of men's mental health.
Because being 30 years old and making $50K is not what it used to be 30 years ago. Being 30 and making $50K adds there's an added pressure because you're not necessarily able to provide the same type of lifestyle now. If you were married in 30, you can't provide the same type of lifestyle now versus what you could 30 years ago.
Correct.
Because in 1990, if your household income was 80K, you'd have to make 182 nowadays.
Correct.
1990.
Okay.
You'd have to make 182. All right. So that would be two people making 91,000. Only 3% of people in the United States make over 80.
Correct.
Well, my only contradiction or my only comment to that is also especially where we live and where Jake, you were living for a time being, is that everyone complains about these apartment costs and all this stuff. I agree is a problem, but even when I in the early 2000s, a nice apartment was cheaper, but it also didn't have granite countertops and fucking wood floors and all this bullshit of this. It's deemed this fake luxury, but it's No one's forcing. Now I know rent's high. I mean,
but go find out and find a place nowadays that you can live in that don't have those things.
I agree completely. I think we're going down the wrong way with that as a country.
I'm trying to see the devil's advocate here.
Yeah, the devil's advocate. But my problem is that,
I mean, I'm trying to see the devil's advocate
I understand,
of where
but I'm
you're
saying,
coming
like, there's
from.
plenty of people that, like, even the house that I live in. Now, granted, I bought it for 180. Now it's worth like 300. So I couldn't even afford this.
I bet more than that. Yeah.
But my issue with that is that a lot of people look at this house and are like, what? Like, I don't want a 1,200 square foot ranch. I want a 4-bedroom house that I grew up in a nice subdivision.
So
it's
people
like,
want to overextend themselves.
It's like,
I get that. I get what you're saying.
You can't afford that. You also can't afford your fucking $400 a month lease payment. Buy a fucking used car.
You know what the average car payment in America is right now? It's
all right.
$600.
He's bringing the statistics. That's the
new car. Why does a fucking 22-year-old get a new car?
I agree with that.
Go fuck yourself. You don't deserve it. You didn't earn anything. You haven't done shit about it. So your men's mental health thing, not you, Jake, but I'm saying these young men, they're like, well, I can't afford a brand new car. It's like, well, no shit. You've been in the workforce for a year and a half.
I get that.
And you're paying off your student loans that you chose to do, which I think is another ripoff. Society, I agree, is bearing down, not just on men, but everyone else. I agree that the state of the country and the world is absolutely going in the wrong direction, and it will level out as it always does. In my opinion.
Do you think we were too easy, and then now we're coming back, and now that's why we're all pissed?
I'll say this, and this is very extreme, but I was just watching today.
It's all encompassing. So, like, regardless of the,
I would rather be living in an apartment that I could barely afford than watching. And again, this is very extreme when you talk about back in the old days, but it was, D-Day anniversary, and I'm watching
it's tomorrow. Today's the anniversary of Operation Overlord. Tomorrow's the anniversary of D-Day.
They're interviewing World War II. No, they were interviewing World War II vets that are still alive, and they're just fucking talking about getting off the boats. And it was just like walking by all these people, like, you knew as you got on that beach. Like, would I rather do that when fucking times were easier and I was providing for my family back home by knowing I was going to die? No, I wouldn't want to do that. I'd rather live in an apartment that I probably can barely afford, that has granite countertops and running water. I agree there's problems there, but I'm trying to go back to the whole men's mental health thing. It's like there is a bit of a self-realization. Like, we maybe as men and just people in general, they have this idea of possibly living in the past that, well, it wouldn't have been nice that if I could afford my picket fence with a big yard. It's like there's a shit ton more people now, and the problem is that there's nowhere for them to live. And yes, you want to get in the housing thing. Like, even in my neighborhood, LLCs are buying up houses and they're going to be even worse in the next 5 to 10 years, because a lot of the subdivisions that were people buying, now they're renting houses because they are available for a decent price compared to an apartment. But yeah, that's just the way it is. I mean,
but how do you
not being
fix that?
Satisfied with yourself is, I think, that's a big issue of the men's mental health, which is what we're talking about, is not allowing yourself to accept the wins.
But now we've gotten to what you were trying to get to. So
I've been trying to get back to men's mental health for like 20 minutes.
But
like, it's I get it. The society,
but I was talking about
every generation has their problems.
But that's what I was talking about. You got to look at the cause before you get to the effect.
I think,
and that's what I was trying to do.
Some of the socioeconomic issues that we're having in this country.
Absolutely, but early in this conversation, we're talking about men not being able to fucking talk. So you can talk about how society is treating me rough. Again, I will defend the U.S. to a point where it's like, I'd rather live here having these struggles versus a lot of other countries. But I would say that it's going back to the fact that the men's mental health thing is you're not able to talk about stuff. But it's also just like anything else. And I agree with a lot of what you're saying, Jake, about the struggles of where this country has been going to. Even in again, I couldn't afford buying this house today. I'd be looking in a lot shittier neighborhoods because that would be my budget for a mortgage, and I'd probably still be renting. And I'd be frustrated, and I get all that stuff. But at some point, when you're talking about men's mental health, these are not the solutions of, not saying you're blaming, but you can't not you, but people like men cannot just keep, oh, I would be doing much better if it wasn't for the Fed rate or the housing.
Well, I'm not saying, I didn't say any of that.
Sucks.
I'm not
but
saying
I mean, that's
any
what
of
we've
that.
been talking about. So I'm like saying, like, to fix or to help the men's mental health, going back to the core of it, is you need to be able to talk about it. You need to be able to, like, what is going to make you happy? Seth, do you want to say something?
I keep coming back to this quote in my head that I heard, and it's kind of like a pendulum thing. It's like hard men create
Yes. Amen.
easy times.
Absolutely.
Soft men.
Sean Anderson actually posted that whole thing in the comments.
I just
say the whole thing again. Say the whole thing again, Seth.
So the only and I agree to a point. The only disagreement I had with that, and I actually mentioned it in the comments too, Sean. I know you're not watching the comments in the audience. There are always, regardless of where in that phase we are as a society, there are always strong men. They're just not necessarily noticed or needed until hard times.
Sure.
But say the quote. Say the whole quote again.
So hard time.
No, so let him say it.
Hard men create easy times. Easy times create soft men. Soft men create hard times.
Bingo.
I think it's just a big.
I agree with that, but I mean, what does that have to do with men's mental health?
How does it not?
It's about how the mental health of a hard man making it easier for for those guys, so then they don't have to worry about stuff as much as those guys did. And then
so who's got the better mental health? The hard men creating the times, or the soft men that are living it?
I think
they have better.
Probably.
No, they're fucking lazy. That's not good mental health.
Maybe not per se, but
there's plenty of those stereotypical fucking like rich kids, that grow up in it and then they have all sorts of issues.
True.
So it's like,
I'd say there's a balance here.
Yeah. I think the hard men, when they are in the times where things are hard, and the hard men or the strong men come into focus because of the need for strong men, the stuff that they have to do in those hard times to be able to create easy times after them, that is what becomes a struggle to them.
Right.
So like you asked, so like we talked, Steve brought up World War II generation. There's very few of those survivors left. If you talk to those survivors and you hear the kind of stuff that they went through, like that is a burden that they carry. After that, after World War II, things got easier, and then we created, what we call these, easy times. And then now we've created soft men, and it's just kind of going cyclical. We have people nowadays like Sean Anderson, for example, who in the last 20 years, we've seen that generation in the last 20 years become the generation of the World War II era, where they've been the ones that have had to step up, and they've been the strong men during hard times.
Right.
That have then created what we have now, and the burden that they have to deal with going through those times and what was called upon them, that has been a mental struggle for people in that generation.
So they have mental health issues, right?
Well,
what you're saying?
I mean,
I'm going back to the topic here.
22.
So going back to the quote,
22 veterans a day.
We throw out all these things. Absolutely. So answer the question. Where are the men's mental health issues? Who has them? Which generation?
Everybody.
They all do.
Absolutely. Everybody. That's my point. Everyone's got different issues, man. Like, that's the whole thing. I'm not like negating any of this stuff. I'm like trying to have a little bit of appreciation that just like anyone else in this garage, the three of us, Jake, you're included, the four of us, we all have shit going on. Anyone you look up to, if you're looking at the mentor thing, you talk to any of those legit mentors, shit wasn't easy the whole time. They either went through those struggles that you're talking about. I don't care if you go, I understand what you're saying. I don't care if you go through them as, in your early 20s, your 30s or 40s. You can have life going at you. You brought up the divorce rate. You get divorced in your 40s. Kristen was living over an apartment. It's like how many divorcees I saw at that pool, that's their life. Like, do you want to, they had a family, they had everything going on, and now they're living their best life that they can, going to the apartment pool and all they're doing is talking about, yeah, so like I had a house, you know, and I went through this. It's like shit happens all the time, man. I get the point of like the hard times create different men, the soft times create that stuff. But as far as men's mental health, it's in my opinion, it's yes, you can strive to have more, you can strive to be better and all that stuff. That is to me what a person should be. It's what a woman should be, is striving to be better all the time, be your best self. And I think the men's mental health, just mental health in general, I think mental health in general has become the same kind of aura of like toxic masculinity over here, mental health issues over here. You throw a bunch of prescription drugs at the mental health, that doesn't help a whole lot, in my opinion. It helps at the time, but are you really addressing it? I go back to what we were talking about. I'm of the opinion that's like, if you're not going to the doctor and all you're doing is complaining about stuff and you're depressed and you're all that stuff, it's like, if all you're doing is getting prescription meds, that's not going to fix things. Because I've brought it up before on this show and to just people in general. How many doctors that, like, when I went in there for that testosterone, I don't know, Jake, if you remember this, told you about it. That doctor said, yeah, we'll do the testosterone test, but chances are you're fine and we'll probably go with a mild antidepressant. That was the solution. So before a blood test to check shit out, going back to the car thing, before that, it's like, oh, well, like, we don't, like, if you're feeling this, let's try this medicine.
Well, and that's a whole other issue and a whole other topic.
But it's all, it is, but it isn't. That's the whole society around you causing these.
But that's what we're saying. We're saying the same thing.
That's what I'm saying. But everyone has these issues. So
there's a cause and effect.
Better? Okay, so how do we make it better? I think as we're kind of getting to the end of this episode here, is that we've thrown out a lot of issues. How do we help it?
I think it's being humble and understanding your own self and having humility and discussing these issues in a not a combative way. I think that's how we resolve the issues with the hard men. I think it's how we resolve the issues with the weak men. It's finding out how we can be honest with ourselves, not anybody else. And how can we provide and be strong for ourselves? That way we can be strong and provide for others.
Okay. And how do you do that?
Well, I'm not the greatest example, but
we're all learning. I mean,
but for me, it's realizing that, I mean, the reason why I brought up the cause thing is because that's like with starting life at an older age, is because that's what I believe has happened really with me. You know, like I went to college and did all that, and everybody on here has heard the story a million times, but I get out of college. I think I'm bullheaded and I'm strong-minded at the time, and I'm full of piss and vinegar. And I was set on being a strength coach. That didn't work out because the money wasn't going to be good. So I adjusted. And then I found this passion in photography and videography and started with Max Effort Muscle and was told that I was going to make $100,000 a year within 2 years. And then that didn't happen. And I get fucked by my employer and a mentor. And then I start drinking a lot. And then I fall down this rabbit hole of this crossroads of trying to pick myself back up. But that crossroads took 4 fucking years. And then I'm 27. And then you pick yourself up and keep picking yourself up. And then here I am in 2024 at 29 years old. And I just realized that I can go back to the gym and feel better and get my blood tested and be more positive about my life because of my own humility and my own decisions to make myself better. So I don't necessarily agree with the people that say you have to find the fire in yourself. I don't agree with that. I think
Right.
that men need to seek out when they need to observe themselves. We need to smoke a cigar and reflect on our life a little bit with somebody maybe a little older, or hang out with people that are maybe a little better off, and not take advice from people that aren't where we want to be in life.
I can agree with that.
And then, only then, can we pick up where we were supposed to leave off from those crossroads and begin a great journey to success, and figure out how we want to create a life that we respect and love.
I know you meant to put it in there. I think you did, but one of the biggest things of all this stuff with the men's mental health thing is, I think, one of the biggest shortcomings from a stereotype, if you will, but it is purely the fact that
Nate soaked. Is it still pouring there? It's pouring here.
Is listening.
Oh, he's soaked.
He's soaked.
Yeah,
That's great.
it was either soak my shirt or soak my pants. So
No, so I think that's the big part of it, though, is all that stuff you were just talking about through your 20s. I mean, I lived through a lot of that with you. It's, and I was guilty of it in a lot of periods of my life too. Is listening. That's where, like, tonight with this conversation, as soon as it took a turn to housing prices and all this stuff, it's like, yeah, we can talk about what's wrong in the world all day long, but talking about men's mental health and stuff like that is like, how do you actually get better? Yeah, you surround.
I know, but it's observing. But you can't.
But you
can't
saying,
find a result unless you know what caused it.
I would call bullshit on that, for the simple fact that with your background, and you just mentioned it in that statement, you were going to do strength and conditioning and all that stuff. You knew all that stuff, and now you're saying you waking up at 29, you're like, oh, I can like feel better if I go to the gym. Like, that's the bullshit side of it. We all know a lot of the answers to this.
But when you get depressed, this is why people don't talk about their feelings, because you can't negate my experience to what I knew to getting depressed and then falling down a rabbit hole. You can't just give advice to people and tell them what's better for them. You have to bring them along.
I understand that, but the biggest,
that's not what a leader does. That's not what a leader does. A leader doesn't just tell you what to do. A leader brings you along and gives you an example of what you should do, and
you have to listen to it as much. That's the point. You're not listening. That you knew that stuff, and then when people give you advice, and I was very guilty of this in a lot of areas of my life too. I could talk about my problems, and people could talk. You could talk to me all day long about, you should do this. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. And then I go and do the opposite. No, I understand all the part about the men's mental health thing. It's like, but as soon as you start listening, or as soon as the things that are surrounding you sink in, and you take the turn, that is a big part of it. So that is, I think, you talk about like the masculine side of it, the men's thing is that we don't fucking listen. People in general don't, but men are terrible at it. They don't listen to shit. They can talk about all the problems all day long. I'm depressed, all this stuff. It's like, well, maybe you should go talk to someone. Yeah, you're probably right. And then it's like weeks later, months later, did you ever go talk to someone? No. Well, maybe you should go get blood tests. Yeah, I probably should. Did you ever do that? No. It's like, it's the listening part of it. I think that's a big key that we're missing here in this conversation, is that men, not only are they stubborn with not going to the doctor or actually like admitting something's wrong, but as soon as they do, they carry over the stubbornness that they're just not going to fucking do it. Whatever they ask you for advice, you tell them. I'm guilty of it too in my life. I listen to it, but I don't fucking do anything about it. And yes, it's because depressed and all that stuff, but it's like, I'm not negating anything. It's simply the fact that it's like, I think that's the reality of it, is that when we're talking about Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, a big bullet point is that express yourself, but just like any other good conversation or any other good dialogue, is that it's not a monologue. It is an actual dialogue, and you listen, you ask questions. You hit it on the head, Jake, I think, when you're talking about you surrounding yourself with people, going into a cigar shop, people that, you look up to and that are living that. But if you actually listen to those people, that's why I did go get my testosterone checked eventually. And I was guilty of pushing it off. But I mean, if I would have listened earlier and would have let it sit in earlier, I could have had a little bit of a jump start on all that stuff, because people were telling me that. And I
too soon old, too late smart.
That's fair. I just think the listening is something that men in general are not good at.
Correct. I would agree with that.
And I think that's a big part of, again, mental health. Like you talk about society and like all these people, everyone like wants to have everyone hear their problems of who they should be and who they identify with and how they identify, not just like with the gender or anything else. It's like, I should be this. It's like, cool. If you want to do that, you should probably start with this and then work forward from that. You talk to them 2 years later and they're like, so how's it been going? Like, nah, it still sucks. You're like, well, have you done any of that? No. It's like, well, you're not helping yourself, so no one else can help you at that point. That's where I say, like, a lot of the answers a lot of times. And yes, depression, you don't want to get up out of bed in the morning. You don't want to do shit. I get all that stuff. But it's not typically, in my opinion, it's not for a lack of answers. It's for a lack of listening and accepting the fact that these are the problems. And then it is to a point where you do have to take that first step. And sometimes it does take 4 years, sometimes it takes 10. And then you have to realize how many more years you may or may not have left. And I think that's the mental health thing for men especially is, I'm of the opinion that, and I've gone through those battles of depression. I've been to therapy before for marriage and otherwise. It's like you have to put yourself out there. And I brought it up earlier tonight, and I'll let you guys kind of finish this out here, is that I feel as though when we were talking about me coming from a home with a mother and a father, not saying that they were a very affectionate couple or anything, but you have the fucking cheat book right in front of you a lot of times, especially if things are good. And sometimes when things aren't good, you have that cheat book in front of you too. It's just a matter of acting on it and accepting the fact that you have your shortcomings, and how do you deal with it? What can you live with? What can you live without and make better? And then the people around you, what can they live with and what can they live without? A lot of times the answers already, and you basically go down the path knowing that, I could have done this better, jobs otherwise, I could have done this better. I knew I could have, and I chose these actions. And it's like, you can't really blame anyone else at that point, because everyone has problems and it sucks. I mean, it really does. I think everyone has a certain level of mental health issues. We all have our mental health in general, whether it be healthy or not, just like physical health, healthy or not. And we're all dealt with different things. And I think there is something also there, not to run on too long, but I think that some of us, just like genetically, physically, we're not all the same. Mentally, we're not all the same either. But I would at least, and I'll leave it, I know I'm preaching on this, is that at least if you go check under your hood and go to a doctor, that's a start. Because there is enough science behind it, is that you could be deficient on something very simple that's causing things to fucking misfire, whether it be in your body physically or also obviously mentally and otherwise. Is that if you're not dealing with a full deck of cards, figure out how good of a hand you can actually deal yourself by making an effort. Or you can, and I'm not saying this in a disrespectful way, because again, I've been through periods of my life, you can piss and moan and hope for things to be better and blame everything else. But it's like, if you're not willing to start with yourself, there is no helping you. And throwing you a fucking orange prescription pill bottles from a doctor, that shit's not going to fix anything. You know what I mean? A lot of those antidepressants are basically sedatives. So it's like the answer is like, hey, I'll just numb you so your life's still going to suck, but you just won't care as much.
Yeah, it's like a drug.
You won't feel
the fuck out of that.
That's why it's called a drug.
That's a medical community that promotes drugs instead of health.
So I'll say this. Communicate the best you can if you're having issues, or even when things are good. Continue as men, communicate to people around you, to yourself, listen, and take action. I know it's oversimplified, but that is, I feel like, the rule book there of dealing with mental health issues is to do that. And also, if you can, respect yourself as much as possible. And some days that's a real low bar. But if you at least try to every day look in the mirror and respect yourself and say, I deserve better, and the people around me deserve better, I think that's a good first step to actually, just in repetition, it'll get better. Hopefully. Not smoothly, but it'll be a roller coaster up and down. But with that effort, just like anything else in life, I feel as though that you can make this progress, and you respect your time that you have on this earth. That's the best part. Whether you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 60s, 70s, no matter what it is, I've been saying a lot lately. It's like how many Wednesday nights do you have left? There's no right answer, and as you're in your second half of your life, we know it's less. But at any point, if you told someone in their teens, it's a real hard discussion to have. How many Wednesdays do you have left? They're like, well, I'm only like 15 years old. I got all in the world. It's like, you don't want to say this to a kid, but it's like, what if you die at 20? What's the math there? How many Wednesdays did you have? And all you want to do is sit in the room and play video games because you don't want to go socialize. You feel bad about yourself. Like, figure it out so that you can make next Wednesday better than this Wednesday. And 5 years from now, hopefully you don't have any, like, you don't, and you're not done and you have more Wednesdays. It's those, just like anything else. You start now so that you hopefully, within reason and within your control, you can get better. Nate, go ahead.
So I was going to bring up a famous example and then tie it all into what you were talking about, Steve. There was a lady who set out to write a book and prove about how easy men have it in this country. And so she actually disguised herself as a man, went through the world, acted like a man, got a job as a man, all that kind of stuff. And the mental strain that she got from it, and she ended up doing it for, I think, like 2 years, and then wrote the book. But still, the mental hardships and anguish that she went through during that time.
Very hardcore and strenuous study. Jeez. 2 years of dressing up like a man.
18 months after she stopped doing it, she committed suicide.
Wow.
And one of the things that she wrote about in her book was that men need other men. And
what book is this?
I forget the title of it. I'd have to look it up.
Okay.
Part of it, to touch on what Steve was saying, part of it is if you recognize that you're going through a struggle, you have to be willing. I think there's a lot of men out there that just want to vent about stuff and complain about problems. You have to be willing to talk about problems, but also hear what other people are saying to you. If you are going to other people that are in your board of directors, as Josh would always say, if those people have advice for you, you have to be willing to listen to that. You can't just vent about your problems and then go on and keep doing the exact same thing all the time, because then you're not making any improvements whatsoever. You have to be willing to talk about the problems, but then also deal and work on those problems. The other aspect of it touches on something that Steve said very early on in part 2. As men, when other men come to us with problems that they are going through, we need to stop saying, suck it up. If a friend of ours, someone we care about, comes to us with an issue, we need to give a damn and do what it is we can to actually help them work through the problem, not just deal with it and live with it, but to actually work on bettering themselves to get through and overcome that issue. I think that's something that for years, decades, generations, we've always heard about is just suck it up. That's not a solution. We need to actually, if a friend of ours comes to us with a problem and they're not just venting, they're actually seeking advice and a solution, we have to be willing to recognize that they are going through something and help them in any way that we are available to do so. because you may be the only person that person has to help them through it. And you don't want to be the one who let that person down. If you're the only person, if that person trusts you enough to seek out your advice and your help, you may be the only person in their corner. They may feel like you're the only person in their corner. So you actually have to not just say, suck it up, but say, okay, here's some advice. The coach in the corner of a boxing match doesn't sit there and just say, suck it up and punch harder. What kind of fucking advice is that? You're just going to run back into another brick wall and get your ass knocked down again. Like, okay, here's my experience. Here's what I've seen, because I'm seeing it as from a different perspective. Or here's what I've gone through. Here's how you can use that to translate into what you're going through. And be there, and don't let it stop there. Don't just sit there and say, all right, here's my 2 cents. Good luck, have fun. No, right. Actually be there. Be a person to follow up. Take the initiative and follow up with that person. And be like, and not 2 years, maybe 2 weeks, a month, like more frequently. Be like, hey, you came to me with an issue a few weeks ago. Like, how are things going? If that person goes, nothing's changed. All right, then we need to have another conversation. Don't just sit there and go, well, I told you what to do and you didn't do it, so now you're on your own, I guess. No, you still need to be there for that person. That person may feel like they're lost at sea. You need to be their anchor.
I agree with that completely.
Jake, how about you? Closing remarks.
Well, no, I agree with your last comment completely, Nate. I think that's the biggest key. I don't think it's about being there for the rest of us. It's about, if you think you're like the badass and you think that you're masculine, you think you have everything figured out, then you, instead of sitting on your ass, need to be a mentor to someone. Because there's a lot of us that everybody's struggling. So you need to, if you think you got it figured out, you need to be there for the rest of us. But I want to go back to, I think what I say sometimes, and I feel like I have to explain myself, but my comments earlier about the history and everything and whether that was misconstrued in a different way, but I'm of the opinion that you can't find a solution if you don't look at the cause. So if it sounds like I'm bitching about history, I'm not. These are facts. So this is what has led us to this point. And really, all the generations have their own problems, but us as getting older, should look at a younger generation and say, how can we fix this problem? If the majority of men have account for 80% of suicides, we should be mentoring the next generation in the best way possible. And I believe that goes back to identifying what has led us to our generations and how we have experienced life and how we have fixed our own problems in our lives, and understanding and reflecting on where we missed the boat on some things and where we didn't miss the boat on some things, and what we did good and what we did bad. And only then, when we do that, we can make the next generation better. But I do really like the end of Sean Anderson's comment a couple comments ago. He said, so you have to be willing before you are capable. And I think that speaks volumes. And before someone says it, that doesn't mean just suck it up and figure it out. That to me, how I interpret that is, is you have to find a mentor. You have to resolve your issues by first establishing that you have an issue, finding a mentor, and finding loved ones and trusting them and yourself. And only then you can decide that you're willing to be capable of success or whatever you decide is your own success, because we're all different. And it's, I guess, in my life and my young 29 years that I've had, I've realized my downfalls. I've realized that I had all the knowledge in myself, but for some reason I got led astray and I had to pull myself back. It took me 6 years, and I'll never get those years back. However, I know, and I'm humble enough that I wouldn't trade those down years for nothing, or for anything, sorry, because I am where I wanted to be 6-8 years ago. And I also pull in my religious aspect, and that has helped me a great deal too. So I would strongly urge for those of you listening and viewing that if you've found your issues, you've disagreed with advice from people, but you're still struggling, find your spiritual route and go all in, because I lost that. And as soon as I picked it back up, my life got a whole lot better.
Nice.
So, but to end it with me, I'm just glad that we can do this. I'm glad that we can have these conversations. I'm glad that people can have opposing views and not get into massive arguments, some of us. And I think that's what matters, because that's all how we learn differently and cultivate our own opinions and find fulfillment in those opinions. So,
no, I think that's great. I appreciate that. That's awesome.
Yep. So I appreciate you guys for having me on, and thank you for supporting Crowned Heads and Oz Family Cigars and supporting me.
100%, man. I appreciate it. Looking forward to smoking more of the Crowned Heads. Obviously, the Coroneta Habano coming out here soon as well. So maybe we'll get you back on here soon. And again, before that event, late July, we'd love to have you and Tim on here.
Yep, I will work on that.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be wonderful. So appreciate it, guys. To all you guys out there, happy Whiskey Wednesday. We'll see you next week. That's nice. I like that one better.
Cheers, guys. Thank
Cheers,
you.
Jake. Have a good week, everyone.